All of a sudden, he felt that something was wrong. Then he saw the sky was turning gloomy. That grey smog in the air did not change from light to dark. It turned into a strange dull yellow instead, and the wind was getting stronger as well. All of the refugees in town were carrying their valuables and running out onto the streets. Some of them were even holding onto their shacks and trying to stabilize them in case the wind blew them down. At this moment, someone from outside the town ran in shouting, "I think a volcano in the Jing Mountains has erupted. The entire sky above the Jing Mountains is filled with smoke." The town administrator stared at him and said, "What are you panicking for? What has the volcano in the Jing Mountains got anything to do with us? We're so far away from it. Where did you come back from?" "I just came back from the coal mine." That person said, "The factory manager made me come back to report to the stronghold about what is happening at the Jing Mountains. I'm a safety officer at the mine." "All right, go and do what you need to do," the town administrator snapped. "Everyone else, be careful and pay attention. Get back into your shacks after the earthquake is over." Only Yan Liuyuan thought there was something wrong with those words. That was because the birds in the sky were all flying south, and the bugs in the ground had all crawled out as well. Could a volcano so far away have so much power? Yan Liuyuan felt something even more terrifying would happen after this. There was a river running through Stronghold 113, but no one had ever delved into where this river's source was and where it ended. The important people in the stronghold had set up several iron fences at the river to prevent any refugees from sneaking into the stronghold. In fact, refugees did so in the past. But at this moment, the people in the stronghold were also panicking due to the earthquake. As a result, no one noticed that the fences at the river had been knocked down by something in the river. That strange thing kept swimming towards the city, and the fish in the river were all alarmed as they swam in the opposite direction of it. It was as though they were exhibiting an instinctive fear. At this time, many people from outside of town came running back. Everyone was wondering, weren't y'all working at the coal mine? Why did y'all come back? The people who came back shouted, "The entrance to the mine has collapsed. There are also many strange bugs running from the Jing Mountains with faces of people on their back shells. They even eat people." Everyone was stunned. There was once a bug epidemic that happened in this world, but that was put to a stop very quickly by humans. But for the people of this era, they had only heard of the bug epidemic but did not see it for themselves. Was history going to repeat itself? Suddenly, Yan Liuyuan heard someone jump into the yard behind them. He turned around and was surprised to see Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu signaled for them not to speak and whispered, "Quick, pack up our belongings." Although Yan Liuyuan and Xiaohu did not know what was going on, they did as they were told by Ren Xiaosu. Yan Liuyuan decided that something must have happened that made Ren Xiaosu come back here to bring them out of Stronghold 113. After living here for so many years, were they finally going to leave this place? However, Yan Liuyuan was not really bothered by this. Wherever Ren Xiaosu was, that was home for him. It was just that Ren Xiaosu had returned too suddenly, so he felt undecided between joy and urgency. When Wang Fugui came back into the school, he saw Ren Xiaosu holding a gun in his hand that was pointed at him. Ren Xiaosu said, "Old Wang, stay here until we leave, I'm sorry." Wang Fugui gave a bitter smile and said, "Are y'all leaving? There's a lot of people outside keeping watch over this yard. Perhaps you could walk out without any trouble, but what about Yan Liuyuan and Li Xiaohu? They won't be able to stop me," Ren Xiaosu said. After returning to the town, he did not rush over to the school immediately. Instead, he went to check on the spot where he had buried the gun. When he found that it was gone, he went to check on the cave he had prepared for Yan Liuyuan. When he realized that Yan Liuyuan had not gone there, he finally returned to town. But before he could make it to the school, he discovered people outside the school keeping watch. Moreover, several of them gave him a familiar feeling. They were from the Qing Consortium's combat troops. It was very easy to tell the difference between the stronghold's private troops and the consortium's combat troops. The soldiers from the private army were like ruffians without any proper bearing. Meanwhile, the soldiers of the combat troops under the Qing consortium were always standing with their backs straight. It clearly showed they had gone through a lot of training. Because of these people keeping watch, Ren Xiaosu chose to sneak into the school. Now that it was getting chaotic in town, it was the best opportunity for him to bring Yan Liuyuan and Xiao away. Wang Fugui said curiously, "Actually, with Mr. Zhang around, the Qing consortium wouldn't dare do anything to you, right?" Ren Xiaosu was startled. "Mr. Zhang?" At this time, Ren Xiaosu realized Zhang Jinglan wasn't around the school anymore. He still didn't know what had happened at the school. But there wasn't any time to talk about this now. Ren Xiaosu said, "I'm not leaving because of the Qing consortium. It's just that demons and monsters have started appearing in the Jing Mountains, and they're heading here now." When Ren Xiaosu was passing through the canyon, he heard the sound of the wild animals running behind him. The wild animals, experimentals, and face bugs were all probably being forced southwards by that sea of fire. At that time, it wouldn't be him alone who would be in danger. Everyone in town would end up in danger as well. But Ren Xiaosu didn't have any time to explain. He said to Wang Fugui, "You heard them talking about those bugs, right? The number of bugs is terrifying, but they're just a small part of the danger." Wang Fugui said in surprise, "Just what did y'all encounter in the Jing Mountains?" "No, Ren Xiaosu, you have to let me go. I have to go back and get my son. We'll leave together with you." "Leave with us?" Ren Xiaosu said doubtfully, "Your family business is here, but you want to leave with me?" He never considered the possibility of bringing Wang Fugui with them. Normally, even if Ren Xiaosu were to try and persuade Wang Fugui to leave together, he should be unwilling to believe Ren Xiaosu's words. But as it turned out, it was the complete opposite. Ren Xiaosu didn't even have to persuade Wang Fugui and he made the decision instantly. Wang Fugui thought about it and said, "I don't know about other things, but I know that we can survive as long as we follow you." When Luo Xinyu and Yang Xiaojun came out of the stronghold for the first time, Wang Fugui had said to them that no one but Ren Xiaosu would make a good guide for their expedition into the Jing Mountains. Of course, this did not mean that old Wang believed Ren Xiaosu was really good at what he did, but that he felt Ren Xiaosu was tough enough. A child who survived an attack by a pack of wolves and also brought another child with him to grow up and survive together, that was not something a normal person could do. Right now, there was something Wang Fugui understood, only Ren Xiaosu knew what had happened in the Jing Mountains. He was someone who had witnessed the changes in the Jing Mountains personally. If he did not believe him, who else could he believe? But Wang Fugui was different. He felt that if he didn't believe someone who had personally experienced what had happened, then who else could he believe? Ren Xiaosu looked at Wang Fugui seriously for a moment. He suddenly understood why old Wang had managed to live safely up till now. Wang Fugui was neither a capable person, nor was he ruthless enough. All he knew was how to act in front of those important people from the stronghold by behaving slickly, but that shouldn't have been enough to keep him alive for so long. In the past, some esquires enjoyed a good relationship with the important people in the stronghold too, but didn't they also get harmed or killed all the same? It had to be said, Wang Fugui possibly had a peculiar survival instinct that allowed him to make the most correct of choices in the face of danger. Wang Fugui reiterated, "Perhaps no one else believes you, but I do. I'm going with you." To tell the truth, Ren Xiaosu was also thinking about it. Most people would be a burden to Ren Xiaosu if escaping. But Wang Fugui was different. Old Wang was still a businessman at heart, but he had shown enough goodwill to Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan. Being the shrewd businessman he was, Wang Fugui noticed Ren Xiaosu's hesitation. He said, "I won't go with you and add nothing. First of all, I have money and medicine. Second, I'm better at dealing with people than y'all are, so I'm not going to be a drag." At this critical juncture, Wang Fugui made his value known. Only by having value would someone else want to bring you along with them. He did not pin his hopes on depending on their previous friendship to convince Ren Xiaosu because he didn't think that friendship was worth much in times like this. Ren Xiaosu gave it some thought before saying, "I don't care about your money. Go and come back quickly." Ren Xiaosu wasn't a devout person. If it had been someone else, he definitely wouldn't allow that person to leave at such a time. What if that person reported his presence to the Qing consortium? But the goodwill Wang Fugui had shown to Ren Xiaosu made him trust Wang Fugui this one time. Moreover, the Qing consortium was probably too busy to do anything about Ren Xiaosu. The people keeping watch outside were nowhere near enough to take him on. Yan Liuyuan and Xiaohu quickly packed their belongings. Yan Liuyuan handed a copper coin to Ren Xiaosu and said, "Mr. Zhang said that if we have no place left to go, we can head to the northern frontier to look for him. But if we still have a chance of survival somewhere else, don't go there. He says that the northern frontier is a very tough place to live." Ren Xiaosu looked at the coin and asked, "What happened here?" Yan Liuyuan proceeded to relate the events of that night, including Luo Lan's attitude towards Zhang Jinglan and also some of the things Zhang Jinglan said. He concluded, "Uncle Fugui was also the only one who stood up for us that night." "Okay, I understand." Ren Xiaosu asked again, "Did Mr. Zhang mention what his identity was?" "No." Yan Liuyuan shook his head. "I don't know what his identity is, and he didn't answer me either when I asked. But one thing's for sure, he's definitely an important person in Stronghold 178. Ren Xiaosu said, "If we really have no place to turn to, we'll go look for him at the northern frontier." Xiaohu said, "Our belongings are packed. There isn't actually a lot to bring." Ren Xiaosu took a look and saw that Xiaohu and Yan Liuyuan had basically only brought along foodstuffs. Even the cabbage that was planted by Zhang Jinglan in the school's backyard had been picked. They were quite similar to him, very practical. "Bring the buns and cornbread," Ren Xiaosu said, "but the cabbage is unnecessary. We can always pick wild vegetables along the way while we're escaping." What's in that bag?" "Smoked meat." Sister Xiaohu said, "You didn't bring any dried food with you the last time you departed, so I thought I'd make some smoked meat to store away for whenever you needed to go out again." Ren Xiaosu stayed silent for a bit. "Thank you, big sister Xiaohu. This has really come in handy." Bro Yan Liuyuan looked up at Ren Xiaosu and asked, "Is it really dangerous this time? The people in the stronghold can depend on the walls to keep them safe, but the townspeople can't defend themselves against those creatures. There won't even be a place for them to hide." Ren Xiaosu said, "Actually, the best thing to do now should be to open the stronghold to everyone so they can go in. But I doubt that those who are in the stronghold will allow that to happen. Then let's wait for Uncle Fugui to come back before we leave. We can head southwest to where Stronghold 109 is," Yan Liuyuan said. Ren Xiaosu sized up Yan Liuyuan and said with a laugh, "You look pretty handsome with your face cleaned up. It's like you're one of them in the stronghold." "Hee hee." Yan Liuyuan smirked. These two brothers' faces had always been dirty. But ever since Yan Liuyuan went down with a fever for some time, Xiaohu helped him wipe his face clean. Suddenly, the town broke into an uproar. But this time, it wasn't the sound of people watching a commotion but the sound of cries for help by many. The entire town had descended into chaos. Ren Xiaosu strode out of the school's entrance. The soldiers keeping watch immediately reached for their guns when they saw Ren Xiaosu. They had been distracted by the events in town, so they didn't expect to see Ren Xiaosu walk out from the inside. But before they could even draw their guns, Ren Xiaosu made the first move. He started shooting as he made his way outside. None of those who had been keeping watch managed to run away, and they all ended up dying to his pistol. At this moment, Wang Fugui ran over to the school with his silly son, Wang Dalong. When he saw Ren Xiaosu finishing off around 7 people without any hesitation, he felt quite shocked. Although Ren Xiaosu was known to be ruthless, he never expected he would be this ruthless. It was as if Ren Xiaosu had changed after his trip into the Jing Mountains. When Ren Xiaosu turned around and looked at Wang Fugui nearly jumped out of his skin when he saw the coldness in Ren Xiaosu's eyes. However, Ren Xiaosu lowered his gun when he saw that it was Wang Fugui who had come. "Let's go, we'll head over to Stronghold 109. Wait!" Wang Dalong suddenly said, "Can we bring Li Yuqin along?" Ren Xiaosu seriously pondered this question. Who is Li Yuqin? She's old Li's strapping daughter, Yan Liuyuan provided. "I won't bring her along with us," Ren Xiaosu said and shook his head. Wang Dalong got ticked off. "You're the school's substitute teacher. How can you abandon your students without a care? If Mr. Zhang were here, he definitely wouldn't just leave her here." Ren Xiaosu looked at Wang Fugui and sighed with emotion. "Seeing how anxious your son is, it feels just like love. Actually, they're quite compatible." Wang Fugui was astonished. "Why would you say something like that at this time?" Then Ren Xiaosu turned to look at Wang Dalong and said, "Too bad I'm not Mr. Zhang." When Wang Dalong heard this, his heart broke. He didn't expect his relationship to end just like that. That sight made it look like the town had suddenly been dyed black with an ink pot. The originally colorful town was getting taken over by the invading swarm of insects. The wild animals were further out and running over. Ren Xiaosu did not spot the wolf pack or the experimentals, so the face bugs were probably the first wave of creatures to reach the town. But he thought that it wouldn't take too long before an even greater danger arrived. The refugees were all fleeing to the stronghold's gate and crying as they begged outside the walls for those in the stronghold to save them. "Open the gate, quick! Please, open the gate and save us! Don't you all see those bugs? Please, just let my child in!" The refugees outside the walls were all begging on their knees, but the private troops guarding the walls only gave some token fire with their automatic rifles at the dense cloud of bugs. At no time did they ever think of opening the gate to let the refugees through. Besides, their action of firing at the bugs was no different from trying to put out a forest fire with a bucket of water. Seeing that the bugs were about to arrive and the gate was still firmly shut, some of the refugees started cursing. But before they could swear much, they were forced to leave. Otherwise, the bugs would be here. Ren Xiaosu had never had expectations of anyone, so his initial reaction was not to go to the stronghold to bargain but to leave immediately. He didn't care if other people lived or died. All he wanted was to take care of Yan Liuyuan and the others first. At the beginning, Ren Xiaosu was worried that Wang Fugui would bring along many cumbersome items. But then he discovered that Wang Fugui and Wang Dalong were only carrying one backpack each. Although Wang Dalong looked a little stupid, he was very strong. He did not look careless at all carrying his belongings. There was even a moment when Ren Xiaosu wondered if Wang Dalong was a supernatural being himself. Ren Xiaosu opened Wang Dalong's backpack and took a look inside. He found it was filled with hardtack that had circulated from the stronghold, while Wang Fugui's backpack was filled with medicinal supplies. The medicinal supplies had been taken out of their packaging and stored into plastic bottles according to their function to make them easy to carry around. Curious, Ren Xiaosu asked Wang Fugui as he led everyone in their escape to the southwest, "I thought you would bring gold or something similar. I would have liked to, but I don't have the strength to carry them. If my stamina doesn't last, I'll end up dead," Wang Fugui said with a bitter expression. "But I did bring quite a bit of money with me. However, they're all issued by the Qing Consortium. When we get to Stronghold 109 and exchange them for the Li Consortium's currency, they're probably going to be devalued by half." Wang Fugui was panting as he ran. As he usually didn't exercise, he ended up being the most tired as they were making their escape. Ren Xiaosu glanced at him. "Quit complaining. The medicine you've brought with you is valuable stuff. Those thousands of anti-inflammatory pills you have are worth 200 yuan each. There was also another thing. Now that they were escaping, money was useless when compared to medicine. Zhang Jinglan had once said that gold was a hard currency. However, he didn't mention another hard currency, medicine. In fact, Wang Fugui had made the smartest decision this time. Not every refugee in town was foolish enough to cry for help at the stronghold walls. Some also understood the important people in the stronghold did not care about the lives of the refugees. As such, they decided to escape straight into the wilderness. When Ren Xiaosu and company left, they could still hear the cries of the refugees who stayed behind and gunshots fired from the top of the walls. Soon after, an even more thunderous sound rang out. Ren Xiaosu turned back to look and saw that the private troops atop the wall had started throwing grenades and bombs down. There were still a lot of alive people below the walls. Some of the smarter refugees were running frantically for the wilderness. When some of them tripped, they just rolled over and got up again in one swift motion. No one dared lay on the ground for even 1 second. It wasn't only Ren Xiaosu and company who were escaping southwest. Several hundred others were doing the same as well. As Yan Liuyuan and Xiao were unable to run as fast, Ren Xiaosu had to run together in a group with those few hundred others. Fortunately, Ren Xiaosu was able to carry all of their luggage by himself, so that made it easier for Yan Liuyuan and Xiao. After running for a while, everyone started to slow down when they realized the face bugs did not come chasing after them. Everyone other than Ren Xiaosu was exhausted from the running. Some of them turned around to have a look and saw that the town had now become a purgatory of sorts. Their shacks were all burning up in flames. "Our home is gone," someone muttered. Some of those who had just lost their families couldn't hold it in any longer and started crying. Ren Xiaosu witnessed earlier that some of these people had even abandoned their young children so they could run a little faster. But there were also others who held onto their children protectively before eventually getting killed by the swarm of face bugs. The back shells of those face bugs seemed to become clearer, and the sound of their mandibles chewing on their victims was a nightmare many would find hard to forget. By this time, their group had reached a relatively safe zone, having left the town earlier. The face bugs seemed like they were more interested in the stronghold, so they did not bother to catch up to the humans who had escaped into the wilderness. Ren Xiaosu suddenly had a feeling that the stronghold would help attract attention from the humans who were escaping. After all, those wild animals and face bugs would go to wherever there was more food. At that time, when the Qing Consortium's combat troops joined the battle with their firearms and heavy weapons, they shouldn't have a problem holding off the wild animals and monsters with the help of the stronghold. If it weren't for the fact that he needed to avoid the Qing Consortium, Ren Xiaosu might just have waited for a while here in the wilderness until the Qing Consortium finished off those monsters. Then he would bring Yan Liuyuan and Xiao back to the stronghold's town. But right now, he needed to steer clear of any Qing Consortium-controlled areas. But it was at this time that Ren Xiaosu started frowning as he looked out into the area. Everyone could feel it as well. It's another earthquake. This earthquake was even more violent than the previous one, and some people who were unprepared for it fell to the ground. "Look, what's that?" someone said as they pointed north. They saw a giant, dark line quickly approaching southwards from the direction of the Jing Mountains, which then went straight into the stronghold like a knife. The grand and curved wall made a loud crackling sound like an iceberg breaking off. There were even thin cracks appearing from the bottom and going up on the sturdy walls. Ren Xiaosu was so absolutely stunned by this scene that he could not speak. The giant fissure did not form a trench but broke the entire stronghold up into 2 semicircles. In addition, the ground on the west side was suddenly raised by over 10 meters. It was as if someone had suddenly pulled up an entire piece of the plain to form a stair. It was here that 2 tectonic plates converged, and it only took an instant to break the stronghold's walls into 2 halves. The walls had collapsed. The tectonic plate movement that caused the earthquake was like a black swan, one that flapped its wings and brought a disaster upon the stronghold. This stronghold seemed like it was situated right on two fault lines. With the violent movement of the plates, they tore it apart. But that was not the only disaster brought on by the earthquake. The houses in the stronghold also crumbled, and countless people were buried alive under the buildings. Ren Xiaosu was watching all this unfold from a faraway hilltop. The walls that had protected the residents of the stronghold for decades, or even over a century, was crumbling piece by piece like a melting glacier. In the end, the entire place was reduced to ruins. This was perhaps the most shocking and insane sight Ren Xiaosu had ever witnessed in his life. The private troops atop the walls did not even have time to withdraw and fell to the ground along with the walls. Their bodies were all crushed. These walls were at least 50 meters tall. A normal person who fell off would die for sure. The wave of face bugs that couldn't get past the walls started swarming into the city within the stronghold. Those important people in the city who were unable to recover in time from their panic caused by the collapsed buildings were eaten by the face bugs. Wang Fuegui and the others also stopped in their tracks and turned around to watch this sight with deep fear in their eyes. Xiaosu, will the people in the city survive? Xiaoyu asked under her breath. Ren Xiaosu turned around and continued heading in the direction of Stronghold 109. It's enough that we survive. In Ren Xiaosu's opinion, there would still be a portion of the Stronghold's residents who could make it out alive. With a population of several 100,000, it was impossible that there weren't any smart people in the Stronghold city. Moreover, the Qing Consortium's combat troops were still in there. But all of that didn't have anything to do with him. In this era, if it was of no concern to you, you didn't have to care about it. In the past, none of the important people ever cared about the life and death of the refugees. As such, no one would care about their lives now. Besides, it wasn't like anyone could do anything about this disaster. Suddenly, someone said, "Look, there seems to be some kind of strange light in the stronghold." The next moment, Ren Xiaosu turned around and was surprised to see a gigantic bubble drifting towards the face bugs. Shortly after, the bubble burst, and it forcibly pushed the swarm of bugs back by dozens of meters. Furthermore, the bugs closest to the front looked like they had been killed by the blast. The others might not know what that was, but Ren Xiaosu immediately thought of the person who had been caught and sent into the stronghold, Zhang Baozhen. This bubble was also larger than the one he had seen, but its appearance and effect were exactly the same. Ren Xiaosu was uncertain. It looked like Zhang Baozhen wasn't dead yet. In fact, his power had grown even stronger. It's a supernatural being. Someone exclaimed, a supernatural being in the stronghold has made their move. What the hell is that bubble? Ren Xiaosu looked at the surprised people and thought, if I say that it's a saliva bubble blown by Zhang Baozhen, none of you will believe me. Wang Fuegui's son, Wang Dalong, muttered, how I wish I were also a supernatural being. When the stronghold arrested the supernatural beings, everyone distanced themselves at the mention of the words supernatural being. They were all afraid they would get implicated due to these two words. But if they were honest with themselves, who wouldn't want to have extraordinary superpowers? Even someone who had already entered middle age, Wang Fuegui, had also fantasized about it. This was the ultimate desire human beings wanted from this world. However, supernatural beings were rare. From the looks of it, there were probably only a dozen or so among several 100,000 people. Ren Xiaosu knew there must still be other hidden supernatural beings in the stronghold, but their number would definitely not be too high. How does one become a supernatural being? Wang Dalong asked his father. Wang Fuegui said in a speechless manner, I don't know either. Yan Liuyuan remarked, there are probably some conditions like luck or bloodline, things like that. Wang Dalong became dejected. Well, my dad is no supernatural being either. Yan Liuyuan consoled, don't despair, maybe he's not your biological father. Wang Dalong was confused. While he was making his escape, Wang Dalong did not even cry over his lost love. But with this, he started wailing. Ren Xiaosu, you and your brother have such potty mouths. Wang Fugui was nearly cursing. That Zhang Baozhen is a supernatural being, but does his father look like he has any supernatural bloodline in him? By this time, Zhang Baozhen had spat out about 5 saliva bubbles and forced the bugs back, helping quite a few people finally get a chance to catch a breather. They immediately made use of this window to escape out of the stronghold. They were heading for exactly where Ren Xiaosu and the others were. The walls of the stronghold that had crumbled formed large obstacles on the path that made it difficult for the people on the inside to get out. But luckily for them, there was an opening large enough to let several people through at once in the direction of Ren Xiaosu. In times of distress, people would tend to blindly follow others. The people who had been caught in this disaster had lost their ability to think normally and could only run to wherever the others ran to. When one person ran towards this opening, the other lucky survivors followed. The number of escaping survivors started to snowball. Wang Fugui could only make a rough estimation of the numbers. There were probably at least upwards of several thousand people making their escape right now, and it was only going to get higher. They couldn't wait anymore. The face bugs were probably not going to give up on so much food, and neither would those wolves. The sound of sporadic gunfire was getting weaker and weaker. Ren Xiaosu had thought the Qing Consortium's combat troops would be very effective here. But surprisingly, he didn't even see the combat brigade joining the battle. Could it be that the military base was too far away? Eventually, some people from the stronghold tried escaping into the river to avoid the face bugs. Normally, bugs were afraid of water. But just as some people jumped into the river, something in the murky water suddenly opened its mouth and swallowed them. Right after, a dense trail of blood appeared under the murky waters. The entire stronghold city was filled with smoke and the scent of blood. Ren Xiaosu had never seen such a savage sight before. Even he felt that this was too cruel. He frowned and said, "Let's get out of here. Those people who escaped from the stronghold might attract danger." Many of the refugees around them were so tired they didn't want to move anymore. When they were felling from the town, they didn't feel it. But now that they had stopped, they could feel all the muscles in their bodies aching. Much more physical energy is consumed when running at full speed compared to jogging. Wang Fugui, Wang Dalong, Yan Liuyuan, and Xiao were all not as physically fit as Ren Xiaosu. But when Ren Xiaosu called for them to continue, none of them said a word in protest. They would only survive if they listened to Ren Xiaosu. Xiao and the others clenched their teeth and caught up with Ren Xiaosu's pace. Ren Xiaosu said softly, "A lot of lactic acid will accumulate in the body after an intense workout. You must keep going, or else you'll aching even more if you rest any longer." When the other refugees saw Ren and company leaving, some of them followed. But others thought that since the face bugs hadn't noticed them here, there was no hurry for them to leave. It wasn't that they didn't want to go, but that they wanted to rest for a few more minutes. No matter the situation, there were always people who counted on their luck too much. Suddenly, Xiao and Yan Liuyuan realized that of all those who were here, Ren Xiaosu looked the most relaxed. It was as though he didn't feel tired at all. Many of the people could recognize Ren Xiaosu, Yan Liuyuan, and the others, but everyone was too busy fleeing to care about it. Someone suddenly thought of something. "Say, shouldn't there be a factory along the route to Stronghold 109? A buff young man said, "That's right, there's a sand factory over there. I've worked there before." "How many people work at that factory?" "Around 200 people. It's mostly the machines digging for sand in the sand fields, so there isn't a need for too many people. But they do have a vegetable farm, so maybe we can look for something to eat over there." Having escaped a short while ago, everyone was starting to feel a little hungry. Now that the stronghold is no longer standing, does it mean we can detour back to the pig farm and kill some pigs for pork? A man said, "There won't be anyone there to stop us anyway. I wonder if the women in the stronghold are all pretty." Someone remarked, "I've seen that Luo Xinyu before, and she's particularly good looking." Now that the people from the stronghold are in trouble, Ren Xiaosu sized them up. Perhaps these people thought they were no longer in danger, so they also became more relaxed. These people weren't really affected by those who died. The majority of the town's refugees were unfeeling and antisocial. On most days, it was enough if no one made things difficult for others. As such, none of them really felt sad about it when the others died. In addition, they were even more unaffected if it were those important people in the stronghold who had died. In fact, they were probably cheering for this at heart. Only a minority of those who had lost their families appeared to be in very low spirits at this time. Of the 400 or so people here, slightly less than half were female. They were warily watching the men around them. Some of their husbands had just died, so they all knew what kind of danger they were in this time. "Xiaosu, are we going to the sand plant to rest for a while?" Xiaoyu asked in worry. No, Ren Xiaosu shook his head. "We must stay away from them when we rest at night. When danger approaches, it will surely get attracted to the largest group of people first. On top of that, these people could also become a new source of danger." Xiao was relieved to hear that. We brought some food, so you don't have to worry about the food. I know these people from town too well. They're capable of anything." "Okay. Of course, there's no need to get too worried. They're just a mob." Ren Xiaosu nodded. Then he looked to Yan Liuyuan and said, "Hide the gun." When Ren Xiaosu killed the people who were watching them, he had fired the gun. Even if it was very chaotic in town at that time, a lot of people would still have noticed. He wasn't worried that this mob would dare get any ideas about them. But it was still necessary to be careful in case they tried any tricks. The people at the sand plant might not know what happened in town. They probably felt the strong earthquake, but they won't know that the stronghold has already fallen, Ren Xiaosu said. The epicenter of the earthquake was in the Jing Mountains, with the seismic waves spreading out several hundreds of kilometers. Ren Xiaosu was wondering if Stronghold 112 would also have collapsed since Stronghold 113 had been shaken so badly. After all, Stronghold 113 and Stronghold 112 were about the same distance from the Jing Mountains. The fleeing group of people arrived at the sand plant in the afternoon. In the end, they saw that the factory building and the workers' dormitories had all collapsed. A large group of the sand plant workers were busy driving excavators around to clear the ruins of the factory building. When the sand plant workers saw such a large group of people arriving, they were confused. In the end, when they heard that the stronghold was in ruins, they did not know how to react. If the stronghold had fallen, what was the point of rebuilding the sand plant? Most of the escapees sat on the ground. They really could not walk anymore and were planning to rest for the night here at the sand factory. At least there was food here. Some of the people wanted to leave with Ren Xiaosu, but when they saw the majority staying behind, they stopped following him. After all, wouldn't it be safer if everyone stayed together? With the addition of these workers from the sand plant, the crowd had grown to around 600 people. Ren Xiaosu wasn't bothered by this. Instead, he had a look at the sky and continued leading Yan Liuyuan and the others forward. There was probably only 2 or 3 hours before it turned dark, but it was enough time for them to get further. Wang Dalong was grumbling along the way, "Can't we rest for even a bit?" But before Ren Xiaosu could even say anything, Wang Fugui had already slapped his son upside the head. "Keep going if you are told to. Stop complaining." Wang Fugui gave Ren Xiaosu a smile and said, "He's just a kid, don't mind him. It's fine." Ren Xiaosu shook his head. He definitely needed to remember Wang Fugui's friendship with Yan Liuyuan and him. As such, he didn't take Wang Dalong's grumblings to heart. Even if Wang Dalong kept speaking rudely, Ren Xiaosu would still get Wang Dalong to Stronghold 109. Ren Xiaosu thought for a bit more before adding, "Let's keep going for a little more before we find a place to rest. But each of you will have to properly rub down your muscles before fully resting. Otherwise, none of you are gonna be able to go on tomorrow. You won't be able to get away if there's any danger. This was based on Ren Xiaosu's many years of wilderness survival experience. At this moment, the people who were making their escape together with Ren Xiaosu sat on the ground and watched them continue off into the distance. Someone laughed and said, "Isn't that Ren Xiaosu afraid that he'll tire the people with him to death? Wang Fugui looks pretty smart himself and has always enjoyed his status in town. But why has he decided to follow a few brats?" Someone scorned, "When I saw him leaving so anxiously at the beginning, I caught up thinking that there was still danger lurking behind us. But there isn't even anything catching up to us. Wang Fugui must have brought quite a bit of money with him." A shady man whispered, "He's been running a grocery store for so many years, so he must have taken all of his family belongings with him when he escaped. And that Li Xiaoyu, don't even think about it." Someone said with a sneer, "Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan both have guns with them. Surely, you know that. What are you afraid of? We have so many people." Someone said unconvinced, "Why would so many of us be afraid of a gun? How many bullets can he have? Oh, then are you going to attack first?" With that, no one else made another sound. Although Ren Xiaosu had a limited amount of bullets, they only had a life each. Whoever attacked first would die. Ren Xiaosu's assessment of them was not wrong at all, they were just a mob. Someone waved it off. "Don't talk about these useless things. Let's rest here for the night and set off again tomorrow." But as night fell, they suddenly heard the howling of wolves in the distance. Everyone who was resting immediately stood up and looked in the direction of the howling in fear. They knew how scary the wolf pack was, but they never expected them to be here as well. Based on the howls, the wolf pack was at most 3 to 5 kilometers away. "Hurry and run. I didn't really think that there would be danger. We should have followed Ren Xiaosu and left together, fuck." This group of people now regretted it. But when they stood up and got ready to make their escape again, they discovered their legs had become as heavy as lead. They were aching all over their bodies. "Those who don't want to die, hurry and run. Don't fall behind." The majority of the people picked themselves up and ran in the direction of where Ren Xiaosu had gone. They finally recalled the fear they felt when they first saw the face bugs. It had been less than a month since the wolf pack destroyed the factory and the strongholds overseers had issued an order for the refugees to go and bury the dead there. Many of these refugees puked when they saw the bloody scenes at the factory. Even these refugees, who were used to seeing death, couldn't stand the sights at the factory. Of the bodies that were cleared out from the factory that day, none of them were intact. Every single one had been torn apart by the wolves. Ren Xiaosu was away from town at the time, so he didn't know this happened. But for the refugee, they got a fear of wolves. But the faster these refugees wanted to run at this moment, the more they found it difficult to do so. Far away, Ren Xiaosu was sitting beside a campfire and adding firewood to it. As they were too distant, they did not hear the howls of the wolves. There was steam emitting from a small pot hanging over the campfire. Ren Xiaosu had cut off 2 pieces of the smoked meat Xiaoyu had prepared, and thrown it into the pot. The instant he did so, the aroma of the meat drifted out from the clear porridge that was being cooked while Wang Dalong looked at it hungrily. Ren Xiaosu looked at everyone else and said, "Don't just sit there and wait. Use this time to massage your muscles. We still have to run tomorrow. Smells good." Yan Liuyuan sniffed the food. "I even saw some wild coriander along the road. Let's crush it later and throw it into the porridge to make it even better," Ren Xiaosu said with a smile. The coriander found in town were usually just saplings. However, coriander could grow up to half the height of a human being. In fact, a lot of people wouldn't even recognize it once it grew beyond the sapling stage. Coriander. Wang Dalong squirmed and pouted, "I don't eat coriander." "You don't eat coriander?" Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. "But it's such a fragrant herb. Why don't you eat it?" Don't you find that coriander has a bedbug-like smell? It makes me want to vomit whenever I smell it. Wang Dalong said, how can you guys even eat it? Ren Xiaosu looked at the coriander in his hand and mused, maybe because I've never eaten bedbugs before. Wang Dalong was confused. I've also never freaking eaten it before, alright. Wang Fugui was peeved as he ladled out a tiny bowl of porridge for his son. Then he said to Ren Xiaosu, if you want to put in coriander, just put it in. But can you not gross out my dear son? Ren Xiaosu chuckled at that. However, he realized Wang Fugui had taken too little porridge for Wang Dalong. He purposely didn't take a single piece of smoked meat for him and left it for everyone else. Old Wang, Ren Xiaosu said in seriousness, I'm very grateful that you stood up for Yan Liuyuan and big sister Xiaohu that night. Also, you were always great to me whenever I sold my catch in town. I remember all of that, so you don't have to be so polite since we're all trying to escape together. Ren Xiaosu took Wang Dalong's small metal bowl and ladled out some more porridge for him. He also added a piece of smoked meat for him. Xiaohu had brought several metal bowls along. In the early winter, every one of them was holding the metal bowls as they waited for the porridge to cool down while it warmed their hands. Ren Xiaosu often sold his sparrow catches to Old Wang and often mentioned he could also sell it to Old Li's grocery store as an excuse to raise Old Wang's offers. But in fact, Ren Xiaosu had been to Old Li's shop before and knew that he only bought sparrows for 900 yuan. Meanwhile, Wang Fugui sometimes paid him up to 1,200 yuan. Whenever winter arrived, Wang Fugui's offer to buy the sparrows would go up by a few hundred yuan, and those few hundred yuan was often enough to afford a new coat. Sometimes, Ren Xiaosu felt that even in such difficult times like now, there were still some people who glowed with kindness. It was like a charcoal fire burning in snowy weather. Wang Fugui looked at the smoked meat in Wang Dalong's bowl and said with a sigh, I'm glad I didn't misjudge the two of you brothers. Although Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan could be very annoying, Wang Fugui knew well that these two brothers were both very sentimental. Uncle Fugui, don't worry. Yan Liuyuan smiled and said, once we get to Stronghold 109, we'll help you rebuild the grocery store. We're in such a desperate state. There's no need to talk about the past. Wang Fugui waved it off with a smile. Actually, Wang Fugui was more open-minded than Ren Xiaosu imagined. It was as though he wasn't particularly attached to the family business he operated at Stronghold 113. But right at this time, Ren Xiaosu and the others heard footsteps in the distance. There seemed to be several hundred people running here towards them. Ren Xiaosu drew his gun and looked at the others. Hurry up and finish your porridge. Yan Liuyuan and the others did not care about how hot it was anymore. They gulped down the porridge in one go per Ren Xiaosu's instructions. It was fortunate that it had already cooled down a little, or else everyone would have scalded their tongues. Ren Xiaosu frowned as he watched the crowd of several hundred people running over. Something's wrong. These people are fleeing for their lives. We've got to hurry and leave too. At the beginning, Ren Xiaosu was quite curious as to why this mob was suddenly on the move again. Didn't they say they were going to rest at the sand farm for the night? But he immediately figured it out. The only thing that could get these people moving again was danger. Ren Xiaosu and the others were also decisively quick. Before this crowd of people could get close to them, they had already continued to escape. The mob behind them were all achy and hungry, while Ren Xiaosu and company had massaged themselves for some time and even ate hot porridge. Although everyone was trying to escape, the circumstances of their situations were entirely different. And in times of real danger, Ren Xiaosu could carry the luggage of everyone, so his group had it easier. Suddenly, Ren Xiaosu turned around and looked at the top of a hill in the distance. The silvery wolf king he had seen before was currently overlooking the escaping crowd in the wilderness. It was quietly watching its prey. Wolves usually followed behind their prey and waited until they get exhausted before launching their final attack on them. If the mob kept running away in fear, soon they would probably lose all strength to keep escaping. When that happened, it would be time for the wolf pack to capture their prey. Ren Xiaosu frowned. We have to get as far away from those people as we can. Although it may sound bad if I say they're our shield, we don't have a choice here. Wang Fugui hurriedly said, it's not too bad to use others as our shield. But just as he finished his sentence, Ren Xiaosu heard the roaring of engines and was stunned. Why were there vehicles out here? The sound of the engines was very abrupt in the wilderness. It sounded like the roar of a wild animal. Before long, Ren Xiaosu realized what had happened. It was the sound of the people who had escaped from the stronghold. From the looks of it, their escape route was also in this direction. However, he didn't know just how many people had managed to make it out of the stronghold. This was one of the world's oldest genus of tree, as well as the species with the most powerful genetics. When Ren Xiaosu first saw the Qing Consortium's logo in the Jing Mountains, he wondered if they had chosen to use the white ginkgo leaf as their logo because they hoped to stay around forever. The vehicles were roaring as they arrived. But when they approached, Ren Xiaosu felt there were too few of them. They were so few in number there wasn't a need to count them. There were just 3 off-road vehicles and 2 military transport trucks. Didn't Su Xianchu say that the Qing Consortium's combat brigade had a strength of 4,500 soldiers? Why did so few people make it out then? A single truck could take up to 50 people at least, right? Then did it mean that only about 100 of them managed to escape from the stronghold? What exactly happened? In reality, Ren Xiaosu had underestimated the horror of this disaster. As there were much fewer brick and mortar structures in town, Ren Xiaosu did not consider the consequences of them or even the high-rise buildings collapsing. Most of the structures in the stronghold were made of brick and mortar. You could say that Ren Xiaosu's imagination had been limited by his poverty. This earthquake had even caused the land to crack open, splitting the stronghold into 2 as it forcibly turned the river into a waterfall. This was the power of nature, and humanity could do nothing about it. After the brick and mortar structures in the stronghold collapsed, a large number of humans were crushed to death under the buildings. Countless people had died, including those who were from the Qing Consortium. What was most unfortunate was that the military base was situated right across the fault line, as it got split in half. Luolan was panting in the off-road vehicle. The most embarrassing fact was that he was only dressed in a pair of flowery boxers. When the earthquake occurred, he was still fast asleep. It was fortunate that the barracks he was living in was hardy and strong, and the structure was low to the ground, letting him survive. As it was winter now, there was heating in the barracks and inside the off-road vehicle. However, there wasn't any in the wilderness. Right now, Luolan was most worried about what would happen if the vehicle ran out of gas before they could reach Stronghold 109. At that time, he might have to get out and hoof it as they made their way towards Stronghold 109. Thinking of this, Luolan said, "How much gas does the car still have?" The soldier in the driver's seat said, "There's still a third left. We can keep driving for about 130 kilometers. Can we make it to Stronghold 109? Luolan asked. The soldier said awkwardly, "We're still 210 kilometers away from Stronghold 109. There's definitely not enough gas, but we can actually have the people in the off-road vehicle behind us get out while we siphon the gas from their vehicle, Luolan's eyes lit up before he sighed. Forget it, the people in that off-road vehicle are all injured, and so are those in the transport trucks." The soldier was silent for a moment before saying, "Sir, both you and Mr. Qing Zhen treat us very well, unlike the other big shots of the consortium. We don't mind if we have to suffer a little." "Enough, don't bring it up anymore." Luolan waved his hand irritably. "You're speaking like I'm a good person. I'm not. Don't you know that the good die young?" "Sir, there's a group of people up ahead running," the soldier said when he saw the fleeing refugees. Luolan disdained, "There was also a group behind us just now. What's the big deal? Pass them and make them eat our dust." When the refugees saw the convoy of vehicles passing them, they got rather jealous. How great it would be if they also had such vehicles to ride in. There were actually vehicles at the sand plant as well, but as they were deployed to transport the sand, only the excavators remained at the plant. They couldn't go fast and were gas guzzlers. At this time, someone from the group of refugees suddenly ran out. "Boss Luo, I'm the manager of the sand factory, Wang Yihan. Please bring me along with you. I've met you before." Luo Lan's driver asked, "Should we bring him with us? I don't even have enough space for the injured. Why would I bring him?" Luo Lan scolded, "Ignore him." When Wang Yihan saw the convoy getting further and further away, he got so angry that he almost wanted to shoot that fatty Luo dead with the gun in his hand. But on the one hand, he did not have the balls to do so, so he could only think about it. On the other hand, he couldn't catch up to them. Ren Xiaosu watched the convoy as it approached from afar. He told Wang Fugui and the others, "I believe that there'll be quite a lot of people from the stronghold making their way here. Don't worry too much. There'll be enough people to attract the attention of the wild animals on our behalf. If there are still wild animals that might attack us, leave them to me." Wang Fugui was a very smart man and could sense the confidence in Ren Xiaosu's claims. Ren Xiaosu should know all about the kinds of danger following them, but he wasn't afraid at all. Wang Fugui thought about it and wondered if Ren Xiaosu could also be a supernatural being. How else could he be the only one to return when so many people went on the expedition to the Jing Mountains? Moreover, could Ren Xiaosu also have killed people in the Jing Mountains? If not, why was Ren Xiaosu able to kill those people keeping watch at the entrance of the school without batting an eye? Xiaosu, I'm not sure if I should ask this." Wang Fugui said with some hesitation, "But what on earth happened in the Jing Mountains? Where did the others go? 20 of us went on the expedition." Ren Xiaosu thought about it as he said, "But there should only be 4 of us who made it out alive. These 4 were Su Xianchu, Yang Xiajin, Luo Xinyu, and Ren Xiaosu himself. As for what happened in the Jing Mountains, I'm not sure either. There are bugs that eat humans and humanoid experimentals whose intelligence has been dumbed down." Ren Xiaosu said with a sigh, "But actually, those aren't the scariest things out there." The monster whose claws came out of the crater was like a bad memory for Ren Xiaosu. The monster was simply too enormous, and it even lived in magma. At this time, the Qing Consortium's convoy of vehicles passed Ren Xiaosu and company. Ren Xiaosu saw Fatty Luo through the windows and wondered if this was the legendary boss Luo who gifted him that banner with the words "Magic Hands Restore Spring." "No matter what, we're fortunate to have you with us." Wang Fugui said with a sigh, "If you didn't bring us out with you in time, Dalong and I might not have made it out at all. I don't even know how to thank you." At this moment, Ren Xiaosu looked at Wang Fugui seriously and said, "The grace of dripping water should be reciprocated by a gushing spring." Wang Fugui was confused. Shouldn't we be a little more polite with one another? However, Ren Xiaosu didn't say anything else. He found a high vantage point to look into the distance and saw that there were still many others who escaped from the stronghold. "We'll find a place downwind and get ready to rest." Ren Xiaosu said, "It seems like there are several thousand people in the group that's to the rear of us, so we're safe for now. Besides, I think y'all are gonna collapse if we still don't get any rest." At present, the moon was hanging high in the night sky. Everyone had been fleeing since the morning and were on the verge of collapse. Ren Xiaosu felt that they had to reintegrate with the larger group of people again and use them as their shield. If it were a group of several hundred people, they might get attacked by the wolves. But with a several thousand strong crowd, even the wolves should have second thoughts about attacking, right? And if they encountered any danger, all he would have to do was have Yan Liuyuan and the others escape faster than the crowd of several thousand. It might sound a little cruel, but the others were probably thinking likewise. Moreover, if they followed the crowd to Stronghold 109, would there be any possibility that they could pretend they were residents of Stronghold 113 and sneak into Stronghold 109? Ren Xiaosu wondered if Stronghold 109 would agree to let them in. That won't work. Wang Fugui shook his head and said, the Stronghold residents have ID papers. We don't have anything like that. I can just say that I lost them while we were escaping, right? Ren Xiaosu replied. It should not be surprising since we traveled over 100 kilometers to escape from such a big disaster. Wang Fugui said, it's difficult to say since there isn't information sharing between the strongholds. Even if you say that you were a Stronghold 113 resident, there isn't a way for them to verify it. In the past, an authorization letter would be required to travel between the strongholds, and the letter would have to bear the official seal of the stronghold overseer. But now that Stronghold 113 is no more, and with Stronghold 113's overseer, Old Lu, sent away to the northern frontier by the Qing Consortium, who knows whose hands the official seal has ended up in, Ren Xiaosu clicked his tongue. He would have died in the stronghold if he didn't get shipped off to the northern frontier. What a blessing in disguise, now that you say it, it sounds like the Qing Consortium saved his life, Wang Fugui said in a speechless manner. But you have to consider other factors, too, if you want to sneak into Stronghold 109. For example, there are still more than 600 refugees here who recognize you. Besides, if Stronghold 109 were to refuse every single person from entering, even the big shots of Stronghold 113 would end up becoming refugees, not to mention us. That's a possibility. Ren Xiaosu said, Stronghold 109 most likely won't allow anyone in. No precedent had been set for a matter like this. As no stronghold had collapsed before, there was nothing Ren Xiaosu and the others could compare it to. They could only take it one step at a time. It would be good if they could get into the stronghold, of course. But even if they could not get in, Ren Xiaosu and company would still be able to live well. However, it would be tough for those big shots who escaped from the stronghold. It was at least another 100 kilometers from Stronghold 109 from where they were now. To get there, the distance alone might be enough to exhaust them to death. In the event they did arrive at Stronghold 109, many of these people would probably break down if they found out they weren't allowed in. Ren Xiaosu and his group found a spot downwind and decided to rest there for a while. Even if Ren Xiaosu could go on, Wang Fugui, Xiaoyu, and the others would not be able to bear it for much longer. When the other refugees who escaped walked past them, they discovered that Ren Xiaosu's group had stopped moving and were rather surprised by it. They asked, "Why have you all stopped walking?" Ren Xiaosu looked up at them. "We can't walk anymore." Ren Xiaosu, who was sitting on the ground, lowered his head again and started massaging his leg muscles. Seeing that Ren Xiaosu did not want to bother with them, the refugees didn't say anything further and continued moving forward. "Are they really unable to keep walking?" a few people asked after they walked away. "Didn't you see them massaging their legs?" "We had some rest in between, but they probably had none at all, right? They were being too smart for their own good. I think he was so far ahead that he didn't hear the wolves howling." Someone sneered, "If he heard it, he would definitely be running away faster than us." This group of people kept whispering as they continued to walk. They were not planning to tell Ren Xiaosu about the wolves at all. However, Ren Xiaosu did indeed know about the wolf pack that was following them. It wasn't only the wolf pack, there were even more terrors like the experimentals. After those refugees walked away, Ren Xiaosu whispered, "I have a bottle of water here. All of you take a cloth, wet it, and wipe your faces." The faces of the stronghold residents are all clean, but our refugee faces are too dirty. We would get recognized straight away. Put on whatever better clothes you have as well so that we can assimilate with the stronghold residents. The refugees lacked water, as even the families of esquires like Wang Fugui did not have enough water rationed to them. Ren Xiaosu had retrieved this bottle of water from the storage space in the palace. Even during the period he was stashing away the gold, he did not forget to place the 2 bottles of water inside. It was exceedingly important to have clean water when you were out in the wilderness. Of course, the water in the bottle was refilled at a later time. The water that was originally in it had been drunk long ago. As refugees, they were used to not washing their faces on most days. But now that they were planning on assimilating with the group of stronghold residents, they would have to look at. If there were really a chance to get into Stronghold 109 when they arrived there, it would be terrible if they were denied based on this detail. Actually, Ren Xiaosu had the chance to wash his face clean. After all, it wasn't particularly difficult to find a water source out in the wilderness. But his dirty face at that time had served as protection for him. If Su Xianchu, Yang Xiaojun and Luo Xinyu saw Ren Xiaosu after he wiped his face clean, they would probably not recognize him if they didn't scrutinize him. His face before could be considered beyond dirty. When the other refugees passed by them, Ren Xiaosu deliberately had Yan Liaoyuan lower his head. In their group, Yan Liaoyuan's face was clean, so it would make him easily recognizable to any refugees who saw him. Now that they had wiped their faces clean and changed into better clothes, they might just be unrecognizable once they mixed with the crowd of stronghold residents. After all, there were several thousand of them behind and it was a sea of people. They dusted off the dirt on themselves and cleaned their faces a bit more. At this moment, the large contingent of residents who had escaped from the stronghold finally arrived. As a result, Ren Xiaosu was stunned when he saw them. Why were this group of people's faces even dirtier than theirs? The fuck? What a miscalculation! He had the mindset that the stronghold residents' faces were all very clean. And since Yan Liaoyuan's face stayed clean even after escaping all the way here, Ren Xiaosu did not think about how these people did not have it as easy as Yan Liaoyuan did when they fled for their lives. He saw these people appearing before him who each looked more wretched than the last. The grime on their faces was so dark it looked like they had just been through a battle. The dust generated from the collapse of the buildings after the earthquake stuck to their faces. As they made their escape, they started sweating, which made all of their faces look black and dirty. At this moment, the faces of Ren Xiaosu and company were extremely clean and it made it seem like they were the big shots of the stronghold. Meanwhile, these people in front of them ended up looking like refugees. The earliest batch of stronghold residents that arrived was taken aback when they saw Ren Xiaosu. However, no one said a thing at all. Everyone was busy escaping right now, so who would care whether some people's faces were clean? Xiaohu started laughing from beside him. Ren Xiaosu said expressionlessly, "Ahem, let's dirty our faces a little again. What a waste of half a bottle of water." Ren Xiaosu found it somewhat regretful to have cleaned their faces. When the main group of stronghold residents passed by, Ren Xiaosu successfully blended Yan Liaoyuan and the others into the crowd. Everyone was in a state of confusion at this time, and no one noticed them joining in. "We'll stay in the middle of this crowd," Ren Xiaosu whispered, "try to minimize contact with the refugees." Worried, Wang Fugui said, "Will this really work? There'll surely be some refugees who can recognize us." "Don't worry." Ren Xiaosu was not bothered about that. "We're just trying out our luck. Just think about it. If all of those refugees die, then no one would know our identities." Wang Fugui looked at Ren Xiaosu in shock. Could that even happen? But all of a sudden, it seemed a conflict broke out among the fleeing crowd up ahead. Ren Xiaosu jumped up a little to have a look. It appeared that there was an argument going on between the crowd of refugees and stronghold residents. The sand plant's manager, Wang Yihan, was holding up a gun to someone's head. MHM Yan Liaoyuan nodded. Ren Xiaosu could not possibly protect him at every moment, so he would have to learn to protect himself and even the others. Ren Xiaosu squeezed to the front of the crowd. With his current physical fitness, no one was able to stop him from pushing his way to the front. When he got there and furtively started watching the commotion, he heard Wang Yihan say ruthlessly, "I said, hand over your food to me." Can't you understand human language? But I'm very hungry as well, said the bespectacled middle-aged man who had a gun pointed at his head, choking up. It seemed he had never met some as fierce as this in the stronghold. The managers of the various factories, like Wang Yihan, were actually residents of the stronghold as well. But as they had been stationed outside for a long time, there was always going to be a little bit of unruliness to them. They were the imperial envoys sent out by the stronghold. Since they were equipped with guns, they had long since gotten used to having things go their way. By this point, everyone had descended into a world without order. As such, they started behaving like wild animals. But just some time ago, this fellow wanted to kneel down and beg Loyal Land to take him along with them. Wang Yihan said to the people beside him, "Search him and those two fatties next to him too. Their pockets are bulging." The people standing with Wang Yihan were his workers at the sand plant, so they were used to carrying out his orders. As he had a gun with him during this time, and because he had promised to help them get settled upon reaching Stronghold 109, Wang Yihan became the mainstay of this group. But to carry out a body search on the Stronghold residents? How would they as refugees dare to do something like that? Seeing these people around him not moving, Wang Yihan raged, "What? Are you all deaf to my words now? I have a gun, so my word is law. Search them without worries. They're not armed." Ren Xiaosu understood from this statement that there were some gun control laws within the stronghold, which was why Wang Yihan was so sure the others did not carry any guns. At a glance, he saw the refugees subconsciously stood on the side of Wang Yihan. One of the reasons for this was that Wang Yihan had already made a name for himself in town. The other was because he was carrying a gun. At this moment, a middle-aged man came to the front of the crowd. "Wang Yihan, you had better put the gun down. We won't condone your tyranny." "Chief Ma." Wang Yihan looked startled. "What are you doing here?" Chief Ma sneered, "What? Did you think that we're all dead? Hand the gun over." "Gun?" Wang Yihan turned to look at the gun in his hand as if making a decision. Then a cold smile appeared on his face as he raised his hand and fired the gun at Chief Ma. Bang! Chief Ma fell to the ground in a pool of blood. There wasn't even a chance for him to react. He had not expected Wang Yihan to shoot. The people watching the commotion started screaming and wanted to retreat, but where could they retreat to? Wang Yihan had hesitated for a moment because he used to live under the rule of Chief Ma. But he soon came around and remembered that Stronghold 113 was no more, so what power did Chief Ma have over him? Wang Yihan said in a cold voice, "Stronghold 113 is no more. When we get to Stronghold 109, everyone will get a fresh start. I'm not a cold-blooded killer, but if anyone disobeys my orders, don't blame me for being unkind." Of the several thousand people escaping, there must have been some high-ranking officials in the stronghold among them. But even then, so what? They were nothing the moment they left Stronghold 113. Ren Xiaosu stepped back and withdrew. When Wang Yihan killed that person, none of the refugees dared to even make a sound. As such, Wang Yihan would probably get even more unreasonable with his gang of refugees later on. But what business was that of Ren Xiaosu's? None at all. As for the gun Wang Yihan carried around, Ren Xiaosu was not the least bit bothered by it. Just by the stance Wang Yihan held when he fired the shot, it looked beyond amateur to Ren Xiaosu. If Wang Yihan fired off another few shots in succession, the recoil might even cause him to lose grip of the gun and send it flying out of his hands. As he made his way back to Yan Liuyuan and the others, Ren Xiaosu noticed a group of teenage boys and girls wearing light blue uniforms. He was taken aback by the sight because he saw the words Stronghold 113 No. 2 Senior High School written on the back. Were they students? Ren Xiaosu once heard Zhang Jinglan say there were dozens of schools in the stronghold, consisting of elementary, junior high, and senior high schools. There were even such things as universities in the larger strongholds too. Zhang Jinglin also mentioned that teenagers around Ren Xiaosu's age were able to sit in clean and well-lit classrooms while attending their classes. There would be many teachers teaching them basic knowledge of subjects, and there wasn't a need to go out into the wilderness or go to work. The strongholds even offered some subsidies for the students. At that time, Ren Xiaosu felt really envious of their situation and thought how good it would have been to be born in the stronghold. When Ren Xiaosu passed by these students, they took a look at him and did not think much of it. They did not know that what was so easily accessible to them was something Ren Xiaosu badly wanted in the past. The students seemed to have been frightened by the gunshot. A young woman beside them said, "Don't be afraid. Your teacher will deal with anything that happens. We've already escaped from the stronghold." So this was a teacher of the stronghold? Ren Xiaosu glanced at the young female teacher and thought she was much better looking than Zhang Jinglin. If they had a teacher like her at the school, perhaps even a child like Wang Dalong would start studying hard. Seeing so many of these students here, his thoughts shifted to the second side quest he was given. 1,000 gratitude tokens. In the past, Ren Xiaosu wouldn't even think about it. Where was he supposed to earn so many gratitude tokens from? When he first heard about this side quest, his reaction was to earn them at the school. After all, he had only managed to complete his previous quest with a large portion of the gratitude tokens coming from the students. But now that the stronghold had been destroyed, he didn't have any idea of where he would earn these gratitude tokens from. Ren Xiaosu remembered the time he killed the experimentals where he thanked himself 7 times. If he could thank himself and earn the gratitude tokens, did that mean that he could do it again until he completed the quest? The black saber was floating quietly within the palace in its display cabinet at this moment. Once his mind focused on it, it would materialize in his hands. Even now, Ren Xiaosu couldn't forget the pleasure of slicing through those experimentals with a single slash. So, if the basic form of the black saber was this powerful, what would it be like when he unlocked the next stage? When he came back to where Yan Liuyuan and the others were, he tried out the thanking in a whisper. Yan Liuyuan was quietly watching Ren Xiaosu as he mumbled, "I want to thank myself for not killing the innocent. I want to thank myself for raising Yan Liuyuan to this age. I want to thank myself for not spitting out the grape skin when I eat grapes." Yan Liuyuan was confused. Ren Xiaosu sighed. The palace was seemingly dead. It had no reaction at all. Ren Xiaosu found this a little regrettable. If he had known, he would have thanked himself more while he could. But Ren Xiaosu didn't notice that Yan Liuyuan, who was next to him, was totally confused by this. Other people might not have heard what Ren Xiaosu said, but Yan Liuyuan did. The psychological impact he had gotten from being asked by Ren Xiaosu to thank him for an entire night had not been completely forgotten yet. And now, his brother was even resorting to thanking himself? And what was that about thanking himself for not spitting out the grape skin when eating grapes? Could he get more insincere than that? Suddenly, a commotion broke out in the crowd again. Wang Yihan had ordered the refugees to conduct a search on everyone present there. It seemed like he intended to confiscate and collect everyone's food supplies. Wait! It wasn't just food. Ren Xiaosu saw those refugees taking the watches off the wrists of others and their jewelry as well. They didn't miss out on a single item. These residents who had escaped from the stronghold were really unfortunate. They had just lost their properties and families this morning, and by nighttime, they were stripped of everything they owned. By the time they reached Stronghold 109, they might even end up with nothing on them that they could sell for money. Wang Fugui was a little nervous. "Xiaosu, will they take everything of ours for themselves?" As a matter of fact, Wang Fugui was carrying his life savings, medicinal supplies, gold jewelry, and cash on him. These things were all extremely valuable, so those refugees would definitely not miss out on taking it for themselves. But Ren Xiaosu shook his head. "Don't worry, no one's gonna take anything from us." In fact, Ren Xiaosu had no intention of crossing paths with Wang Yihan and his group. He only wanted to arrive at Stronghold 109 safely. That was it. But the problem was, even though he did not trouble troubled him. The escaping crowd of people were like an obedient bunch of sheep at this moment. More than 3,000 people were getting body searched by over 600 refugees, but no one resisted, nor did any of them dare to say a word. They didn't even have the balls to escape from here and just stood in their spots. Ren Xiaosu found it a little difficult to understand this. If the 3,000 of you raised your arms against those refugees in protest, what could the 600 of them possibly do? The refugees were indeed more fierce than those from the stronghold. But 2 fists would find it difficult to overcome 4 hands, so what was there to be afraid of? Ren Xiaosu looked into the crowd and saw the female teacher sneaking her students towards the back. It seemed like they were trying to escape from being searched. When the refugees first started searching the stronghold residents, they were holding back a little due to fear. After all, they were facing those from the stronghold. In their minds, these people had always been lofty existences to them. But when they realized the people from the stronghold did not dare to stand up to them, they became even more bold. Some of them even got touchy when they were searching the women. It was at this moment that the female teacher led her students next to Ren Xiaosu's group and stood behind them, apparently to observe the situation to see if they should continue moving further back. But some of the refugees had already come this way. Ren Xiaosu looked at those refugees and wondered whether he would get recognized by them. Since they had changed clothes and mixed into the crowd, it shouldn't be obvious, right? A dozen or so refugees walked over holding big and small bags. They were all wearing the watches they had just confiscated from the stronghold residents. Watches were very valuable items in both the town and stronghold. When the town still existed, only old Li from the grocery store owned a watch. Not even Wang Fugui had one. It looked like there were quite a few rich people of high standing in this group of escapees. But right now, the authority and standing they used to enjoy had all but disappeared. Ren Xiaosu quietly watched as those dozen refugees came over. However, those refugees froze when they saw Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu could only let out a mental sigh as he wondered how the fuck he got recognized so easily. His disguise was an absolute failure. While Ren Xiaosu was thinking about how to deal with the refugees, the person who was in charge of searching and confiscating people's belongings decided to detour around them and went towards the others. Those near Ren Xiaosu looked over in surprise. What was with this? Why had those fierce refugees bypassed this teenager all on their own? Why did they do something like that? Wasn't he just a 16 or 17-year-old kid? In fact, they had all seen it. When the refugees saw Ren Xiaosu, they had expressions of deep fear on their faces as though they were terrified of Ren Xiaosu. They couldn't figure out why these refugees were afraid of him. But what they didn't know was that no one dared to provoke Ren Xiaosu even when they were still in town, much less now when they were making their escape. This guy was famous for being ruthless, and he even had a gun on him. Although the refugees knew there would be a lot of valuable items in Wang Fugui's and Wang Dalong's bags, it was not worth risking their lives for it. The group of students and the female teacher behind Ren Xiaosu silently observed all that happened. The female teacher was looking at Ren Xiaosu's back and appeared deep in thought as she pressed her lips together. Just as the refugees were turning away to conduct a search on the others, Ren Xiaosu suddenly said, "Ahem, you guys, come here." The refugees froze on the spot. They turned their heads slowly to Ren Xiaosu and said stiffly, "What, those watches ain't bad," Ren Xiaosu said. The refugees looked at each other. They had fucking robbed over 1,000 people so far. But now, they were going to get robbed by Ren Xiaosu of all people. What the fuck? This time, the people around them were left even more speechless. So there was someone even more ruthless among them. Then, one of the refugees quietly slipped off his wristwatch and handed it over to Ren Xiaosu in humiliation. Coincidentally, he had witnessed how Ren Xiaosu killed those people at the school. The refugees were ready to turn away and leave. They wanted to get as far away as possible from Ren Xiaosu, but his voice rang out again. You. 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 Your watches are all pretty nice. The four people Ren Xiaosu pointed at scowled. It hadn't ended yet? But what could they say? All they could do was obediently hand over their watches to Ren Xiaosu. Everyone around them was shocked. How ruthless was this teenager? Ren Xiaosu didn't continue to rob them. After all, he didn't really want to take on these refugees. It was better to keep the peace. He waved his hand and said, "Carry on then." The refugees slipped away, their newfound confidence evaporating. Ren Xiaosu handed over the 4 watches he had just taken off them to Xiao and the others. He said proudly, "Here, we can see the time from now on." This was Wang Fugui's first time wearing a watch. He took the watch meant for Wang Dalong with a smile and said, "Quick, thank your uncle Xiaosu." Wang Dalong nearly cried. Why the hell had he suddenly been relegated a generation below Ren Xiaosu? Ren Xiaosu started to get endless fantasies. He wouldn't usually resort to robbing other people, but it wouldn't be a bad thing if he committed crimes against a villain, right? The food they were carrying was already scarce. When the disaster struck, none of them were ready for it, so who would think to go and grab food? Or to put it better, the important people from the stronghold did not have a concept of what to do in a time like this. That was because the majority of them had never had to suffer from hunger before. So even those who did take some food with them had only grabbed a few snacks at most. Of course, there were also some people who didn't get robbed. For example, those who were standing in the radius of 5 meters around Ren Xiaosu were spared from the looting. It was just that the refugee aggressors did not dare to hang around Ren Xiaosu for a second longer. They were all afraid that if they stood near him for a few seconds, Ren Xiaosu would spot something that he liked on them. Ren Xiaosu was checking out the new watches they received with Wang Fugui and the others, unaware of the looks the people around were giving him. Especially that female teacher standing behind him. The look on her face while gazing at him could only be described as complicated. The escaping stronghold residents around Ren Xiaosu could all see that the refugees were afraid of this young man. They were terrified of him. Actually, Ren Xiaosu did not kill people indiscriminately back in town. He had only killed those people because he was forced to do so. But somehow, the refugees always had an instinctive fear whenever they faced Ren Xiaosu. This world was destined to work in a food web. The fearful were afraid of the vicious, while the viscous were afraid of those who murdered in cold blood. After the group of refugees were done with the body searches and looting, they went back to report to Wang Yihan. Someone whispered some words into his ear, causing Wang Yihan to turn to look in Ren Xiaosu's direction. Right at this moment, Ren Xiaosu had a feeling that someone was looking at him. So he turned around and locked eyes with Wang Yihan. However, there was a placid look in Ren Xiaosu's eyes. It was as though he had no fear at all. Wang Yihan had a sullen expression while he remained silent. After a long while, he suddenly said to the refugee beside him, "Ignore Ren Xiaosu for now. If he tries anything else funny, we can always teach him a lesson." When Ren Xiaosu saw Wang Yihan's gaze turning elsewhere, he sneered. Wang Yihan was just someone who picked on the weak. Although he didn't have any dealings with Wang Yihan before, their town wasn't that large, and there were only so many factory managers around. As such, he had heard of him. Wang Fugui said softly, "This Wang Yihan has a godmother who resides in the stronghold, and it was because of her that he got the position of manager at the sand factory." Ren Xiaosu nodded. "Just ignore him." Because of Wang Yihan's ransack of the stronghold residents, it delayed the entire group's escape attempt. Right now, everyone was weary and thought they might as well sit down and rest. In just a short while, numerous people were lying all over the ground. It was way too tiring, so tiring that everyone unknowingly dozed off. Ren Xiaosu instructed, "Y'all go and get some rest first. I'll keep watch for the first half of the night." Liu Yuan, "Old Wang, you guys take the second half." Yan Liuyuan and he couldn't both be asleep at the same time. This was because he and Yan Liuyuan were the only ones who had a gun on them in their group, so one of them would have to remain in an alert at all times. Within their group, Wang Fugui, Xiaoyu, and Wang Dalong all had no reason to harm him. First of all, Ren Xiaosu had not revealed to them the gold he had stored away in his palace. Second, none of them could make it to Stronghold 109 alive without Ren Xiaosu's help. In this chaotic mob, the 5 of them had formed a small unit. No one else would be allowed into their group, nor would Ren Xiaosu trust any other person. Yan Liuyuan said, "Bro, why don't you sleep first and I'll keep watch for the first half? You should be tired after everything you've been through today." No, Ren Xiaosu frowned and said, "Go and sleep like I told you to. Don't waste any more time." "Okay." Yan Liuyuan nodded obediently. Wang Fugui gave a mental sigh. Seeing how well behaved Yan Liuyuan was in front of Ren Xiaosu, who could have imagined this kid had just shot and killed several criminals a few days ago. These 2 kids were cut from the same cloth. When everyone was asleep, Ren Xiaosu started thinking about what they should do. If they could get into Stronghold 109, that would be for the best. The gold he had and those medicinal supplies old Wang brought along should be enough for them to live on. But if they could not get in, they would have to make do with living in the town outside Stronghold 109. That earthquake should have affected Stronghold 109 as well, but it wouldn't have been instantly destroyed like Stronghold 113 had. All of a sudden, a middle-aged man stood up and walked over to Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu looked up at him. "Don't come any closer, or you'll die." Rather embarrassed, the middle-aged man said, "I was a supervisor at our Stronghold 113's Logistics Division. My name is Lu Hai." This time, it was Ren Xiaosu's turn to be stunned. He remembered that Luo Xinyu had told him Lu Buletin's elder brother was a supervisor at the Logistics Division. Surely that wasn't referring to this person in front of him, right? Thinking of this, Ren Xiaosu felt unhappy. At that time, Ren Xiaosu had wanted to kill Lu Buletin. But he, Su Xianchu, and Yang Xiaojun were not cold-blooded people, after all, so they didn't end up killing Lu Buletin. But didn't Lu Buletin still betray all of them? With the attitude Lu Buletin had, would his brother be any better than him? Lu Hai looked at Ren Xiaosu and said, "It's actually like this, I was wondering if I could join your group? When we get to Stronghold 109, I'll immediately have my contacts help arrange for a good place to settle down inside the stronghold. If you want money, I have that too. But it's all kept in the Qing Consortium Bank." Ren Xiaosu gave him a cold stare. It was yet another person making empty promises. "I doubt even your division chief can do what you had just claimed, right? If you were really that capable, you wouldn't just be a supervisor. Get lost." Lu Hai paled as he remained silent for a long time. A lot of nearby people got awoken by the commotion. However, they did not make a sound and just quietly listened to the exchange between Lu Hai and Ren Xiaosu. In fact, many of these people had similar thoughts to Lu Has. It was very obvious that Wang Yihan and the other refugees did not quite dare to mess with Ren Xiaosu. And Ren Xiaosu also seemed a little more approachable than Wang Yihan's group. In that case, wouldn't it be good if they could get Ren Xiaosu to take care of them? They assumed Ren Xiaosu was a kind person since the group he was taking care of consisted of the old, young, and women. However, they did not know the things Wang Fugui and Xiaoyu had done for Ren Xiaosu. The students from Stronghold 113 No. 2 Senior High School were spread out and lying on the ground. They didn't care if it was dirty or not anymore as everyone was exhausted. Only that female teacher was still forcing herself to stay standing. When she saw people approaching Ren Xiaosu for help, her eyes lit up. But to her surprise, Ren Xiaosu dismissed all of those thoughts. She was a little disappointed, but there was nothing she could do. She also started dozing off. It had been a taxing day for this female teacher as she led her students in their escape. In the middle of the night, Yan Liuyuan woke up. Bro, it's your turn to sleep. Ren Xiaosu nodded. He glanced at Xiaoyu, Wang Fugui, and Wang Dalong, who were all fast asleep. Thinking, he said with a sigh, let them rest well today. It's fine for just you and me to keep watch for the night. Wang Fugui took out his food and handed it to everyone. They were now sharing their food. No one hid anything from the others. Seeing how the thousands of escapees were all going hungry without food, the escapees who were beside Ren Xiaosu's group swallowed hard when they saw them eating. But they could only watch them eat. None of these people dared to approach Ren Xiaosu to ask for food. They were not dumb. They knew no one would possibly share their food at a time like this. Instead of being rejected, they might as well not ask. Over at Wang Yihan's side, they had looted a lot of food. But the problem for them was that most of those refugees had not brought any food with them either. And the number of these refugees on Wang Yihan's side numbered over 600. In the end, only Wang Yihan and a few dozen of his most trusted refugees managed to get anything to eat. The rest had to go hungry. We have to continue moving. Wang Yihan said with a sullen face, those of you who haven't had anything to eat yet, don't worry. I believe there'll be food further ahead. From today onwards, we'll all eat wild vegetables and tree bark if we have to. The refugees who didn't have anything to eat yet were all complaining in their heads, yeah, right, you're claiming you'll pick wild vegetables with us after eating a full meal? Where were you earlier? However, they did not dare to speak out even if they were angry. In reality, this group of refugees was not united. Just as Ren Xiaosu had described, they were just a mob. Wang Yihan led the refugees on a march. The thousands of stronghold residents making their escape followed them and started moving as well. Ren Xiaosu was a little puzzled. If it were he who had been robbed, he wouldn't follow Wang Yihan and those refugees even if it meant death. But these escaping stronghold residents were different in that they still had to follow the refugees even if they were robbed by them. Let's go. Ren Xiaosu said to Xiaoyu and the others, it's still a long way from Stronghold 109. We can't afford to relax. Xiaoyu nodded. The majority of the townspeople were mentally stronger than those who lived in the stronghold. Whatever suffering they were going through, they experienced it long ago. The students behind Ren Xiaosu stood up as well. Their teacher was groaning in pain and even fell back onto the ground. Ren Xiaosu turned around to look and saw some of the female students wanting to help their teacher up. In the end, the female teacher slowly got up by herself. She said to her students, your teacher is fine. You don't have to worry about me. We must not lose sight of the main group. A student said softly, Ms. Zhongwu, I'm so hungry. They hadn't eaten for a full day, and after making such a lengthy escape, how could they not be hungry? Some of the students were even experiencing dizziness. The female teacher named Zhongwu was put into a difficult situation. She consoled, let's keep moving forward. Who knows if we might find some food along the way. And there might be people from Stronghold 109 sent over to rescue us. If none of that works out, your teacher will pick some wild vegetables for us to eat. Teacher, what do wild vegetables look like? A female student asked. Ren Xiaosu glanced at that female student and saw she was still wearing a gold bracelet. If their group hadn't been standing close to Ren Xiaosu last night, that gold bracelet would probably have been taken by the refugees. These children had grown up in a world under the protection of the consortium all their lives. They did not even get the slightest whiff of the difficult environment the people living outside the stronghold had to go through, so of course they wouldn't know what wild vegetables looked like. But this question stumped Zhongwu as well. She had only heard the people around them saying they could pick wild vegetables to eat, but she did not have the know-how to identify what wild vegetables were. This was not something they had learned in the stronghold before. But Zhongwu was not stupid. She surreptitiously pointed at Ren Xiaosu and his group, then whispered to her students, see those people in front? You can see at a glance they're more capable than the others. Whatever plants they pick, we'll follow along and pick the same ones as them. Ren Xiaosu had yet not realized that this teacher named Zhang Wu had already identified him as the most capable person of the entire escaping crowd. A student said, "Why don't we just ask him to help us?" Zhang Wu shook her head. "Now that the stronghold has been destroyed, you guys must understand something, no one owes us any help, we can only depend on ourselves." After setting off again, Xiaoyu, Wang Fugui, Yan Liuyuan, and Wang Dalong were clearly back to a better state of mind. Xiaoyu turned around to look at Zhang Wu and her students, then said softly to Ren Xiaosu in a happy voice, "There are quite a few pretty girls in that group of stronghold students, and they're even around the same age as you. How about it? Who caught your eye? Wanna let Big Sis go and speak to them on your behalf? They would absolutely be willing to follow you if you can take care of their meals." Ren Xiaosu did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Big Sister Xiaoyu, you don't have to worry about this. Getting to Stronghold 109 is our main priority." Alright. Xiaoyu smirked. "But if you change your mind, you can let me know at any time. Big Sis will care for your future children." Suddenly, Ren Xiaosu's eyes lit up when he noticed the plants growing beside the road. He walked over and pulled the entire root out of the ground. When Zhang Wu saw this, she hurriedly whispered her students, Go and search for the same plants he's picked." The students who had been hungry for some time rushed over to the side of the road. Right then, Ren Xiaosu told Wang Fugui, "These plants absolutely must not be eaten. After I had some of it 2 years ago, I had diarrhea for 3 straight days." When Zhang Wu and her students heard that, they were speechless. One by one, they threw away the plants they had just plucked out of the ground. Now, Ren Xiaosu realized the students were learning from him. After some thought, he told Wang Fugui, "That small bunch of plants next to your feet is known as pillow grass, aka shepherd's purse 1. It's an edible plant that if eaten raw will taste bitter due to its alkaline nature. But compared to surviving, what's a little bitterness?" Wang Fugui was confused about why he was being schooled on something like this. "My family always makes shepherd's purse dumplings, so I know this." However, Ren Xiaosu did not say this for his sake. Zhang Wu gave Ren Xiaosu a look because she had been observing him all this time and knew why he had suddenly said this. He was saying it for her. Zhang Wu glanced at Ren Xiaosu before turning back to her students and saying, "Everyone, go and pick the shepherd's purse." After she said that, she turned to look at Ren Xiaosu again and discovered he had already left with his group. Laughing next to Ren Xiaosu, Yan Liuyuan said, "Bro, are you interested in that female teacher? She's quite pretty." Ren Xiaosu shook his head. "I'm only hoping that teacher will survive a while more by doing that, that's all." Zhang Wu must have suffered quite a bit after bringing her students out and escaping from the stronghold. In a time like this, who had the time to care about whether others lived or died? Ren Xiaosu was a selfish person, but this didn't prevent him from admiring Zhang Wu a bit. At this time of year, the wild vegetables were beginning to shrivel up. Even a plant as tough as the shepherd's purse had started withering. The escaping masses scoured the roadside as they advanced, looking for anything from plants, to tree bark, and tree roots to eat. At the beginning, the people from the stronghold still held on to their dignity. But now that they were this hungry, they dropped whatever they had left. Instead, it was Ren Xiaosu and company who did not feel any stress. They had been eating such things all along. When wild vegetables were eaten raw, they tasted bitter. They would leave an astringent aftertaste. Some people vomited after eating them as their bodies couldn't handle such foods. However, some people were even more unfortunate. They ended up dropping to the ground and started foaming at their mouths after eating some unknown food they found. No one cared about these people who had fallen to the ground. Everyone walked by them indifferently and continued advancing, as though they were a group of soulless bodies. Only Ren Xiaosu stopped in his tracks. He looked at someone who had fallen and said to Yan Liuyuan, "These are the symptoms of eating Pulsatilla root 1, which I usually call wild celery or poison ginseng. The leaves of this plant look exactly like that of celeries. If it mistakenly gets eaten, the person will show signs of nausea, vomiting, cold hands and feet, and paralysis of the limbs. In serious cases, it can even cause death." Zhang Wu, who was following quietly, took note of what he said. Afterwards, she warned her students not to pick any plants with leaves that looked like celeries. The students said in bewilderment, "But what do celery leaves look like?" These students used to live in the stronghold, so it was only natural that their parents took care of all their basic needs. So who could have possibly learned what celery leaves looked like? After the several thousand escapees passed by, the path they took looked as though it had been swarmed by locusts. All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu saw an off-road vehicle ahead of them. Wasn't that Luo Lan's vehicle? Why was it left there all by itself? Everyone went over to have a look and was astonished to see that the vehicle frame was broken beyond repair. The dirt road in this wilderness was extremely bumpy, so even if an off-road vehicle was well suited for such conditions, it still couldn't hold up to the abuse. Perhaps not even Luo Lan could have expected that he would get into an accident. As a result, they had to abandon the vehicle. A crowd of escapees were frantically opening the vehicle doors to search for anything inside that could be eaten, but they were all disappointed as the inside of the vehicle was cleaned out. Even the seat's leather had been stripped off. Not only that, some of the easier-to-carry parts were stripped off as well. Ren Xiaosu concluded that those parts must have been taken away to use as spares in case the other vehicles malfunctioned. As for this vehicle, it was totaled. Ren Xiaosu wondered if Luo Lan was trying his hardest to hurry to Stronghold 109. Logically, Luo Lan might even have arrived at Stronghold 109 by now. Today, many of the escapees were discussing whether they would be allowed into the stronghold when they got there. On what basis could Stronghold 109 reject them from entering? They were, after all, legal residents of a stronghold. Although there was a big division between the various strongholds, with the organizations the true controllers of each stronghold, they were all supposed to be on the same battlefront. Some of these people were also saying they would probably not be allowed in. They were from Stronghold 113, controlled by the Qing Consortium. But Stronghold 109, which they were heading to, was controlled by the Li Consortium. If they refused to let them in, there was really nothing they could complain about. Ren Xiaosu thought important people from the consortium such as Luo Lan would probably not have to think about whether they would be allowed into the stronghold. After all, the Li Consortium would still have to give some face to the Qing Consortium. But for everyone else, it would be difficult to say where they would end up. They kept moving. But not long after, Ren Xiaosu saw yet another military transport truck parked alone on the road. Yet another vehicle had broken down? Everyone walked closer and realized it had a flat tire. Did they not have any spare tires? Ren Xiaosu wondered. When the military transport truck passed Ren Xiaosu, he saw that it was full of soldiers. Clearly, they had overloaded the truck with too many people. If any more of their vehicles broke down, Ren Xiaosu thought it would probably be incredibly difficult for Luo Lan to get to Stronghold 109. But everyone was overjoyed at the sight of these impaired vehicles. When Luo Lan and his people drove by like the wind, the escapees were all thinking about what gave them the right to travel in vehicles while everyone else had to walk. But it was all good now. Their state of mind had been brought back into balance. On this night, everyone settled down next to the abandoned military transport truck to get some rest. It couldn't even be called a campsite, as it was purely a mass of people huddling together on the ground in the wilderness to sleep. The ground was freezing, and lying down on it would cause the cold temperature of the ground to seep into their bodies. A lot of these people wanted to start a campfire, but the problem was they had nothing to start a fire with. After Ren Xiaosu found a place for Yan Liuyuan and the others, he went to pick some firewood. The accursed weather was getting colder, so the firewood would have to last through the night. Otherwise, everyone could easily catch a cold when they woke up the next morning. Even though Wang Fugui was carrying medicinal supplies, who in the right mind would choose to get sick for no good reason? At this time of year, it was pretty easy to find firewood. When Ren Xiaosu came back carrying a large pile, he spotted Zhongwu crouching on the ground as she attempted to start a campfire. This female teacher had organized her students and got them to gather back a lot of firewood. Then she tried her hardest to drill wood to start a fire. Ren Xiaosu silently shook his head, thinking that this delicate female teacher had probably never done such tough work before. Normal people who wanted to start a fire this way might not even be able to start one after blistering their hands from drilling the wood. Zhongwu thought she might as well stubbornly hand drill to start a fire. A male student said, "Teacher, why don't you let me do it instead?" Zhongwu shook her head. "Your students. There's no need to do such menial and hard work. Go and get some rest." She glanced to Ren Xiaosu's side, hoping to learn from watching how he drilled the wood to make a fire. In the end, she saw Ren Xiaosu taking out a box of matches. Why was this person always so prepared? Zhongwu covered her mouth in astonishment. All of them were clearly fellow escapees, but why did she feel that Ren Xiaosu's group had it so much easier than the others? When Ren Xiaosu got the fire started, it added a warm color to the darkness of the campsite. The previously cold moonlight was also given a touch of warmth. Of course, it wasn't only Ren Xiaosu who had managed to start a fire in the campsite. Some smokers had also brought along matches. But when a few women went over to them to ask to borrow their fire, presumptuous requests were made of them. How long had it been since they'd escaped from the disaster? So who would possibly give themselves up just to start a campfire? Zhongwu hesitated for a long while before walking over to Ren Xiaosu's area. Xiaoyu and the others were chatting when she saw Zhongwu stop to look at her. "Can I?" Zhongwu asked discreetly, "Can I borrow your fire? I can offer you firewood in exchange." "Sure," Xiaoyu said with a smile. "There's no need to give us any firewood. We have enough." "Thank you." Zhongwu said rather excitedly, "Thank you so much." She ran back to her area and carried some firewood over. Then she used Ren Xiaosu's campfire to light it. The students were all watching like an eager flock of fledglings waiting to be fed. All of a sudden, two middle-aged men stood up and walked over to Ren Xiaosu's group. But before they could get near them, Xiaoyu had already given them a cold no in response. The two middle-aged men resentfully returned to where they came from, wondering why there was such a great difference in their attitude towards men and women. "Big sister Xiaoyu is quite assertive," Yan Liuyuan said with a smile. He mimicked big sister Xiaoyu's tone and said coldly, "No. What do you know?" Xiaoyu smiled and rolled her eyes at him. "That teacher named Zhongwu seems rather nice and is a good person." The two men had the cheek to wait for a woman to set an example for them before they came forward to ask for help. They're such failures as men. Besides, Zhongwu had been trying for so long to start a fire by hand drilling wood. She only came to borrow our fire when she was left with no choice. As for the others, they only know to receive the fruits of our labor and don't even want to put in any effort for their survival. When Xiaoyu said this, she purposely raised her voice. The group of men around her were incredibly embarrassed. Then she smiled at Ren Xiaosu and said, "I only dared to speak louder because you're around. So, what do you think of that girl?" Ren Xiaosu was mystified. "What the hell are you talking about? Stop playing dumb." Xiaoyu giggled. "Although she looks a little older than you, a mature wife ensures a joyful life. As long as she's a good person, that's good enough." All right, big sister Xiaoyu." Ren Xiaosu did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Just eat already." Currently, Zhongwu was sitting around the campfire with her students. She comforted them, "Everyone, sleep tight tonight. I have a hairpin you guys can use to burst the blisters on your feet before you sleep." All of the students fell silent. A female student lowered her head and said, Thank you, teacher. Actually, you don't have to do all these things for us. We're no longer at school. What are you saying? Zhang Wu interrupted. I'm your teacher, so I have to safely lead you guys to the stronghold. Teacher, I miss home. I miss my parents so much, I wonder where they are now. The students began crying as they continued. It wasn't until this moment that their grief from the disaster was finally let out. When someone starts crying, the people around them also start crying. It's contagious. The people who had escaped from the stronghold were all crying, and everyone could not help but feel sad. They had really lost everything. Only Ren Xiaosu and company were sitting among the crowd of crying people with dumbfounded looks on their faces. Bro, should we be crying too? Yan Liuyuan asked meekly as he looked around him. It's all right, we don't have to cry, Ren Xiaosu said in a speechless manner. Suddenly, footsteps and some voices came from the way that they had come from. They heard someone over there shout, "Look, there's the glow of fire. There must be survivors." Ren Xiaosu turned around and was surprised to see a young man running towards them with several dozen people. The young man shouted excitedly, "See, what did I tell y'all? I said I would bring all of you to the others, didn't I?" Ren Xiaosu was a little puzzled. This group of people must also have escaped from the stronghold, right? Why had they only just caught up? When the young man came to the larger group, someone asked, "Did you guys escape from the stronghold as well? I remember that those behind us had been prevented from escaping by those strange bugs, right?" A person answered, "It was all thanks to Chen Wudi. He was the one who helped open a path so we could escape." "Oh yeah, he's a supernatural being." The young man whose name was Chen Wudi said happily, "That was something I should do. The great sage equal to heaven shall subdue all demons and monsters to protect the people." Ren Xiaosu thought to himself, what the hell? He took a better look and felt Chen Wudi's attire looked a little strange. There were some words written on the chest area of the blue and white striped clothing he was wearing, Stronghold 113 No. 3 Psychiatric Hospital. What? This person is a mental patient? Ren Xiaosu had heard of the title Great Sage Equal to Heaven before. There used to be a set of books at the school called Journey to the West that students could borrow. There was also a bar that operated before alcohol was prohibited. The storyteller in the bar loved telling stories of Zhao Zilong of the Three Kingdoms, who charged through Cao's army 7 times at the Battle of Changban 1, and also of the Great Sage Equal to Heaven, Sun Wukong, who wreaked havoc in the Heavenly Palace. Zhang Jinglan had said they were part of the 4 great classical novels and were treasures of mankind. There were also 2 novels named Dream of the Red Chamber and Water Margin. But the storyteller had never once narrated Dream of the Red Chamber. Someone once asked the storyteller why he never narrated Dream of the Red Chamber. The storyteller smiled and said it was because he didn't find it exciting enough to tell the story. Some years back, Ren Xiaosu liked to bring Yan Liuyuan along to listen to the stories. But when alcohol became prohibited, life became more difficult as well. As they did not know where the storyteller had gone, they could not listen to the stories anymore. At this moment, someone whispered to a person standing beside Chen Wudi, "Did he escape from the asylum? Isn't he one of those people the Qing Consortium captured some time ago?" The man beside Chen Wudi whispered, "I'm afraid that it might be the case. He's a supernatural being who can materialize a staff in his hand. In fact, he's really powerful too. But he keeps insisting that he is the reincarnation of the great sage. We don't know whether that is true or not." Honestly, they would have regarded Chen Wudi as just a patient with a paranoia if he wasn't a supernatural being. But it was different now, as some people, in their days, actually started to believe a little of what Chen Wudi was saying. But of course, they were also skeptical. Ren Xiaosu looked at Chen Wudi with curiosity, as he was now extremely interested in everything related to supernatural beings. But as Chen Wudi's gaze swept through the crowd, his expression changed when he saw Ren Xiaosu. His eyes seemed to overflow with exhilaration. Make way! Make way! Chen Wudi squeezed through the crowd as he walked over to Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu got an ominous feeling about this. Yan Liuyuan asked in a whisper, "Bro, do you know him?" "No." Ren Xiaosu said in puzzlement. Chen Wudi was approaching Ren Xiaosu. Finally, he stopped when he came before Ren Xiaosu and looked at him with piercing eyes. "Master!" Chen Wudi surprisingly said. Ren Xiaosu had no response. "What the hell?" Chen Wudi turned around and shouted to those who were with him, "I found my master. Y'all take care of yourselves. I'll be escorting him to the Western Paradise on a pilgrimage to obtain the Buddhist scriptures." Everyone watching was speechless. Wang Fugui was next to them and started laughing like mad. Even though he could not understand what was going on, he felt an inexplicable joy when he saw Ren Xiaosu's shocked expression. But at this moment, Chen Wudi turned his head to Wang Fugui and said, "Pigsy, what are you laughing at?" Wang Fugui stopped laughing. Chen Wudi ignored him and went on to look at Wang Dalong. Then he said with a smile, "Friar Sand, you're here too? That's great." Wang Dalong was confused and suddenly felt that his relationship with his father seemed to have changed. Originally, they were father and son. But it had turned into a relationship of fellow disciples. What the hell? Ren Xiaosu suddenly felt a little melancholic. Did he really have to go to the Western Paradise to obtain the Buddhist scriptures? The turning points in life were always unexpected. That can't be right. Chen Wudi shook his head. "Master, which direction are you heading?" "Southwest." Ren Xiaosu was a little stunned. "Stronghold 109 is to the southwest." Chen Wudi said solemnly, "The Western Paradise is also in the southwest. Perhaps Master hasn't realized it yet, but you're already on your pilgrimage." What the hell? This was the first time Ren Xiaosu was so confused by someone. "I'll repeat myself, I'm really not your master, old Wang is not Pigsy, and the person next to him is Wang Dalong, not Friar Sand." Chen Wudi gave a wave of his hand. "That isn't important." Ren Xiaosu and Wang Fugui were dumbfounded. What did he mean by it wasn't important? It was very important, all right. Beside them, Yan Liuyuan was trying to hold back his laughter as he was afraid he would attract Chen Wudi's attention. Xiao was hiding behind Yan Liuyuan, and the two of them were laughing so hard their bodies began to tremble. At this moment, someone asked, "What did you guys encounter during the escape?" Those who had just joined the larger group were still in a state of shock. Those bugs with human faces on their backs were terrifying. "Last night, we even heard wolves howling. We were so frightened we did not dare to sleep for the entire night. But fortunately, Chen Wudi called me the Great Sage," Chen Wudi corrected. "Okay. Fortunately, the Great Sage helped us drive away all the bugs. They seemed to be quite afraid of him." The person speaking was exhausted as he had been in constant fear for the past 2 days. Now that they had joined thousands of others, they finally felt a sense of security. Meanwhile, Ren Xiaosu was starting to think about how to get along with this Chen Wudi. This guy claimed to be the reincarnation of the Great Sage equal to heaven, but Ren Xiaosu did not believe his claims. He presumed this fellow had heard too much of the story of the Monkey King when he was young, so he ended up fantasizing himself to be said hero. In fact, Ren Xiaosu realized after reading Journey to the West that the unyielding heroic image of the great sage who subdued evil was purely the imagination of the people. They only exaggerated his image because they needed a hero to look up to. At this moment, Wang Yihan and the others came over. He deliberately avoided Ren Xiaosu and said to the group of people who had just arrived, "Hand over all your valuables." He still had his eyes on Ren Xiaosu as he spoke. Wang Yihan's strategy was very simple: first, I won't provoke you and your people. But when I'm bullying the others, you had better not interfere either. We're both wielding guns, so mind your own business. However, he was stunned when his gaze fell on Ren Xiaosu's side, where he saw Chen Wudi materializing a black and gold metal staff out of thin air. Ren Xiaosu was also shocked. The metal staff had a gold band on each end, with the middle section being black. Isn't this the golden hooped rod from Journey to the West? When Wang Yihan turned his head to Chen Wudi, he saw Chen Wudi pointing the golden hooped rod at him and saying, "It's you, Xiaozuanfeng 1. Wang Yihan was confused. Who the hell is Xiaozuanfeng? Wang Yihan thought that even if this guy had a mental illness, surely he should be called the Black Mountain Old Demon, Yellow-Robed Monster, or something of that level, right? By calling me Xiaozuanfeng, aren't you looking down on me a little too much?" But before Wang Yihan could react, he saw Chen Wudi swinging the staff at him. Chen Wudi roared, "You're not allowed to bully the folks here." Ren Xiaosu had Yan Liuyuan and the others take a few steps back. He was afraid someone would accidentally get injured by the battle. Wang Yihan still possessed a gun. When Wang Yihan saw the golden hooped rod being swung at him, he reflexively backed off and drew his gun in a hurry. Chen Wudi's staff brushed past the tip of Wang Yihan's nose before slamming into the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust as the ground trembled. In his surprise, Ren Xiaosu wondered whether Chen Wudi's staff really weighed more than 13,500 catties. No, it shouldn't be that heavy. With a loud bang, a muzzle flash appeared from Wang Yihan's gun. But everyone was stunned. No one knew when Chen Wudi had placed his staff horizontally in front of his chest. He laughed and said, "No bullets can penetrate my golden hooped rod." Nearby, Yan Liuyuan curiously said, "But the bullet didn't hit your golden hooped rod. Your chest is bleeding." Chen Wudi looked down at his chest, then took a deep breath and said, "Fuck." After that, the veins on Chen Wudi's neck pulsated, and the bullet that went into his chest was squeezed out of his body with brute force. In fact, Ren Xiaosu noticed the bullet itself did not penetrate his skin. He could still see part of the brass bullet exposed on the surface of Chen Wudi's skin. According to the story, the great sage equal to heaven was so strong he was basically invulnerable. But what kind of muscle strength would it take to stop bullets from penetrating? Ren Xiaosu was absolutely sure he couldn't do the same. Wang Yihan clenched his teeth and attempted to fire off another shot. But in the blink of an eye, Chen Wudi vanished from view. A moment later, the heavy golden hooped rod appeared on Wang Yihan's left, vibrating as it swooshed through the air. It almost felt like the air around it was resonating. As the refugees around Wang Yihan fled from the scene of battle, the golden hooped rod smashed ruthlessly into Wang Yihan's waist. With an audible crack, Wang Yihan's body was twisted in an irregular fashion from his waist. This strike had broken his spine. In that instant, Wang Yihan was sent flying away. He could feel his whole body paralyzed as he lay on the ground. Chen Wudi plunged the golden hooped rod hard onto the ground with a loud thud. Holding the staff upright, he looked majestic. Chen Wudi turned around and looked at Ren Xiaosu. "Master, am I cool?" "I'm really." Ren Xiaosu was dumbfounded and did not know how to continue the conversation. The refugees quickly distanced themselves from Wang Yihan. They were all afraid of getting implicated by Wang Yihan, who was wailing in agony on the ground, while other escapees' eyes were filled with joy. They had long hated Wang Yihan and knew he would only get more and more difficult to satisfy. Someone said to Chen Wudi, "Thank you." "Why are you thanking me?" Chen Wudi waved his hand without a care. "You should thank my master instead." A few people were stunned as they turned around and looked at Ren Xiaosu. "Thank you." Ren Xiaosu's eyes lit up, because he had received more than 10 gratitude tokens with almost no effort. He had been worrying about how to collect more gratitude tokens. He did not expect Chen Wudi would help him get so many of them without him needing to do anything. Yan Liuyuan looked at Ren Xiaosu. He wanted to ask him what they should do next. However, he saw Ren Xiaosu walking eagerly towards Chen Wudi. "Disciple, does your injury still hurt? Master has an excellent medicine here that can treat wounds." Yan Liuyuan was confused, Wang Fugui was confused, everyone watching was confused. Did they really have to head to the Western Paradise to obtain the Buddhist scriptures? However, only Ren Xiaosu understood how a delusional person who liked subduing demons and monsters to uphold justice like Chen Wudi could end up becoming a divine weapon for him to gain heaps of gratitude tokens. In fact, the thought of purely making use of Chen Wudi also crossed Ren Xiaosu's mind. But when he saw Chen Wudi's sincere gaze, he felt a little touched. He sighed and turned to look at Wang Fugui. Before Wang Fugui could react from his shock, he heard Ren Xiaosu say to him, "Pigsy, give some food to your senior apprentice brother." Wang Fugui was dumbfounded. Had he gone crazy? Wang Fugui felt as though the entire world had gone crazy. Although he had such thoughts, Wang Fugui still took out some cornbread and handed it to Chen Wudi. "Thank you, master." Chen Wudi took the cornbread and stuffed it into his mouth. He was famished. Gratitude received from Chen Wudi, +1. The palace's judgment could not be wrong. This was a sincere thank you. When Ren Xiaosu looked at Chen Wudi gobbling down his food, he suddenly felt that this master-disciple relationship wasn't too bad. Chen Wudi looked up and said, "Master, I'm still hungry." Ren Xiaosu thought that not only could this disciple fight well, he was quite an eater too. He thought for a moment and said, "Disciple, do you know what begging for alms is?" "Yes." Chen Wudi nodded. "I'll point out a few people for you. Go up to them and ask them to spare you some vegetarian food." Ren Xiaosu then pointed out several refugees to Chen Wudi. They all used to be Wang Yihan's trusted aides at the sand plant. Ren Xiaosu knew they must have hidden some of the food they had robbed from the escapees. "Okay, master." Chen Wudi carried the golden hooped rod and went to look for those refugees. The refugees nearly pissed their pants. Even now, Wang Yihan was wailing in agony on the ground. "You call this begging for alms? Even though everyone was committing robbery all the same, what makes ours a robbery, and yours begging for alms?" They glanced at Wang Yihan and decided to take out whatever food they had on them. When Chen Wudi returned to Ren Xiaosu, he was holding a lot of food, such as chocolates and crackers. Chen Wudi looked at Ren Xiaosu as though he wanted to claim credit for it. "Master, these are for you." Ren Xiaosu shook his head and said, "Since you're the one who earned it, you should save it for yourself to eat." Honestly, Ren Xiaosu could not bear to eat any of Chen Wudi's food. He did not feel any pressure when he strong-armed the other refugees into giving him something. But for some reason, Ren Xiaosu kept feeling a sense of guilt whenever the thought of bullying the dim-witted Chen Wudi crossed his mind. Perhaps this was also one of Chen Wudi's talents. Beside them, the girls from Stronghold 113 No. 2 Senior High School admired Chen Wudi. He looked rather handsome and even upheld justice for them. Other than his asylum clothes that looked rather unsightly, he looked quite suitable as a hero. The girls stole glances at Chen Wudi. They were also at an age where they were starting to understand love. In this chaotic environment, people who could give them some sense of security would immediately give them a good impression. Only Zhang Wu's gaze was still on Ren Xiaosu. She suddenly felt that Ren Xiaosu might not be a good person, but he was also definitely not a bad person. After the events blew over, everyone returned to normal. They urgently needed some rest as they still had to continue on their way tomorrow. Ren Xiaosu found it a little odd. Those refugees had also robbed many things from the stronghold's residents. Previously, it could be said that everyone had not dared to resist only because Wang Yihan had a gun on him. That was understandable. But right now, Wang Yihan, who was the backbone of the refugees, was dead, and the gun had fallen into Wang Fugui's hands. Logically, the stronghold's residents should be taking revenge and snatching back their belongings at this time. Unfortunately, Ren Xiaosu realized these people were still afraid of clashing with the refugees. Initially, Ren Xiaosu's group consisted of 5 people surrounding the campfire. But now it had turned into 6 people. Chen Wudi ate his food noisily. It looked like he had really been starving for the past 2 days. Ren Xiaosu suddenly asked, I heard that the great sage can perform 72 transformations and can use his hair to create a bunch of monkeys. Since you're the great sage, do you know how to do that? No, Chen Wudi admitted his failings. He said, perhaps it's because I've reincarnated recently. I haven't awakened my other skills yet. Have you tried it before? Ren Xiaosu was curious. Yes, but it didn't work, Chen Wudi answered honestly. Ren Xiaosu glanced at Chen Wudi's head and noticed a small bald patch behind his right ear. It looked like he really had tried it before. For some reason, Ren Xiaosu started to get the feeling that everyone's superpowers were somehow related to their willpower. For example, it was still a mystery as to what the value of his mental fortitude was. For example, the combat strength of Su Xianchu's shadow clone was directly correlated to his mental strength. But it was even more obvious for Chen Wudi. He had fantasized about being the Monkey King, and as a result, he materialized the golden hooped rod. Moreover, his physical fitness was also approaching a state that surpassed humans. Ren Xiaosu wondered whether there were even more patients with delusions who had become supernatural beings like Chen Wudi. Wouldn't those patients with schizophrenia be miserable then? They might end up killing themselves soon after becoming a supernatural being due to their own paranoia. Of course, Ren Xiaosu felt this was quite unrealistic. Not all the mentally ill would have strong mental strength. While he was pondering this, some female escapees walked over to Zhongwu and asked, "Can you let us light a fire with your fire?" Ren Xiaosu turned to look and saw that several women of different ages had approached Zhongwu. They probably felt that being a female teacher, she would be easier to talk to about borrowing the fire as ignition than approaching Ren Xiaosu. Perhaps, they were worried Ren Xiaosu might make some indecent requests of them. Ren Xiaosu was not happy about this. What do you take me for? Am I such a desperate person? And woman, you're already in your 50s, all right. What's with that wary look in your eyes while looking at me? But Zhongwu did not oblige their request. She looked at Ren Xiaosu and asked, "I borrowed your fire to light mine. Would you agree if I let them use my fire to light theirs?" "Go ahead." Ren Xiaosu looked up at the women. He was not so petty as to scorn them. However, Zhongwu's reaction surprised him. As the women repeatedly thanked Ren Xiaosu, they lit the firewood they were carrying and returned back to their spots. From this, Ren Xiaosu reaped yet another 3 gratitude tokens. At this moment, he heard someone snoring beside him. When Ren Xiaosu turned around to look, he saw that Chen Wudi had fallen asleep while eating. Chen Wudi was probably exhausted from having to protect dozens of people all by himself en route. Ren Xiaosu felt this world was a little ironic. Of the several thousand people here, only the crazy Chen Wudi and one woman named Zhongwu were willing to be good people. As for those who felt they were smart and capable, they only had the thought of saving themselves. Even Ren Xiaosu was no exception. But Ren Xiaosu was not ashamed of that. He had never thought of being a good person. "Bro, why don't you sleep for a while?" Yan Liuyuan looked at Ren Xiaosu as he added more firewood to the campfire. "Uncle Fugui and I will keep watch for the first half of the night." "Yeah, I also have a gun now." Wang Fugui smiled. He kept the gun close to him as though it gave him a sense of security while holding it. Ren Xiaosu gave it some thought and said, "All right then, I'll get some sleep first." Liuyuan, teach old Wang how to use the gun. Wang Yihan, who had been struck in the waist by Chen Wudi, had died. Not only was his spine broken, his vital organs had also sustained various degrees of damage. With such injuries, no one could survive. When Ren Xiaosu woke up in the middle of the night, he saw Chen Wudi staring at him with a piercing gaze. No one knew when he had woken up. Yan Liuyuan and Wang Fugui had not slept yet as they were responsible for keeping watch during the night. Wang Fugui was holding his gun and guarding against outside threats while Yan Liuyuan guarded against Chen Wudi. Although everyone knew that firearms would not be effective against Chen Wudi, they still had to keep their guards up around him. To Ren Xiaosu and the others, no matter how much sincerity Chen Wudi had shown them, everyone had just gotten to know him. Who knew if he was just good at acting? Of course, even if they felt that Chen Wudi had other reasons for approaching Ren Xiaosu, it did not seem like he had any motive for doing so either. Right now, the Qing Consortium was probably the most interested in Ren Xiaosu. No, strictly speaking, the Qing Consortium was more interested in Su Xianchu. So Chen Wudi was probably not sent by the Qing Consortium. "Master, you're finally awake," Chen Wudi said. Ren Xiaosu asked, "You've only slept for a while. Aren't you sleepy?" "Not at all." Chen Wudi shook his head and said, "Ever since I realized that I'm the reincarnation of the great sage equal to heaven, I'm fine with just 3 to 4 hours of sleep per night. It's as good as sleeping for an entire night like I used to." "All right then." Ren Xiaosu nodded. It was about the same for him. Now, he could just sleep 3 to 4 hours every day and it would be sufficient rest for him. "Liu Yuan, Old Wang, both of you can go and sleep now. I'll take over." "Master, why don't you sleep for a little while more?" Chen Wudi said, "I'll keep watch for you." "You don't have to." Ren Xiaosu shook his head. "How old are you?" "Several thousand years old." Chen Wudi wasn't too sure of it himself. "After all, I don't know how long I lived in the past. I'm talking about this current life." Ren Xiaosu snapped. He realized he actually had to phrase his words carefully when communicating with Chen Wudi. "Oh, I'm 22, Chen Wudi said. As Ren Xiaosu felt it was rather strange that someone who was 5 years older than him had suddenly become his disciple, he asked, "Were you arrested and brought to the asylum by the private army?" When Zhang Baozhen got arrested, Wang Fugui received news that 3 arrested supernatural beings had been sent to the newly established psychiatric hospital by the private army on that same night. They even transported a lot of medical devices to the hospital at the time. No, Chen Wudi shook his head and said, "I was already in an asylum a few years ago. I told them that I was the great sage equal to heaven, but they didn't believe me. Some time ago, they transferred me to a new hospital for some reason. They even drew my blood and did some tests on me." "Then do you know Zhang Baozhen?" Ren Xiaosu was curious. "The one who blows bubbles?" Chen Wudi's eyes lit up. "Yes, he was in the ward next to mine. There was also another patient, but I don't know where he went." From those words, Ren Xiaosu confirmed that Chen Wudi was really from the psychiatric hospital and had been in there with Zhang Baozhen at the same time. He had thought Zhang Baozhen and the others who had been arrested would get dissected after they got sent into the stronghold. However, they only had their blood drawn? No, according to Chen Wudi, there were originally 3 supernatural beings locked together, but one of them went missing. The one who went missing, probably died, right? "What plans do you have?" Ren Xiaosu asked. "I'll accompany Master to obtain the Buddhist scriptures from the Western Paradise," Chen Wudi answered matter-of-factly. Ren Xiaosu felt uncomfortable and upset whenever he heard this. He thought for a while and said, "What if I'm not seeking the scriptures?" Chen Wudi was stumped. If they were not going to the Western Paradise on a pilgrimage to obtain the Buddhist scriptures, what else could he do? For the past few years, he had been thinking every day about looking for his masters so they could go to the Western Paradise on a pilgrimage to obtain the Buddhist scriptures. Along the way, he would subdue demons and monsters and bring justice to the innocent. However, his master was saying he didn't want to go to the Western Paradise. Chen Wudi considered it for a long time before saying, "No, you have to go." Ren Xiaosu was speechless. "What do you mean by I have to go? I first have to know where the Western Paradise is, right? It's not like Zhang Jinglan talked about this before." Ren Xiaosu suddenly asked, "Do you know where the Western Paradise is?" Chen Wudi was stunned once again. "Nope." "Well, this would be easy to handle. In reality, Ren Xiaosu had realized Chen Wudi had not read the original text of Journey to the West. He only knew about it from hearsay, so it led to him having a heroic dream like this. Those who had read the original text knew that Sun Wukong's image was not that great. Hence, Chen Wudi would not know where the Western Paradise was and probably did not even know what could be found there. He could only remember that the great sage equal to heaven was a very powerful hero and that he must escort his master to obtain the Buddhist scriptures in the Western Paradise. Even if his master did not wish to do so, he had to escort him. Ren Xiaosu thought that it was better that Chen Wudi did not know what Sun Wukong was like in the novel. Sometimes the world needed a hero like him. Even Ren Xiaosu preferred the storyteller's version more. In that version, Sun Wukong treaded on rainbow clouds, wore golden armor, and was an unrivaled god. Ren Xiaosu looked around and saw several thousand people sleeping on the ground with only a few campfires burning. The sky was shrouded in darkness, and the early winter wind got even colder. After the escapees experienced massive setbacks and went on a distant and arduous journey for 2 days, they still had to endure their hunger. They were feeble to the point of collapsing. When the cold wind blew tonight, a lot of these people were likely not going to get up again the next morning. Fever, diarrhea, the flu, and heart and lung failure were all common symptoms for those who suffered from the winter weather. In this wilderness, humans not only faced the hardships of wild animals. There were also prevalent diseases all around them. With so many people fleeing for their lives, it would be impressive if half of them could reach Stronghold 109. The numbers would be fewer if they encountered the experimentals and wolves along the way. In fact, they could be wiped out if that happened. And at this moment, the difference in the circumstances of those who had a campfire to warm themselves last night and those who didn't could clearly be seen. Even the students led by Zhongwu appeared to be doing fine. Let's hurry up and leave. Ren Xiaosu got up and looked at the people around them. This area has become ground zero for an epidemic. If we don't leave quickly, we might get infected as well. No one could save those people anymore. Master, there's greater merit in saving a life than building a 7-story pagoda. Chen Wudi said, we can't just leave these people behind. The Western Paradise is just up ahead. Ren Xiaosu said as he walked, I'm going there to obtain the scriptures. You can stay behind if you wish. Chen Wudi was stunned. After considering it for a long while, he finally caught up. It seemed that escorting his master to the Western Paradise to obtain the Buddhist scriptures was top priority for him. Seeing Chen Wudi catch up, Ren Xiaosu heaved a sigh of relief. He was worried Chen Wudi would foolishly try to save those several hundred people who had fallen sick. How could they save them? Wang Fugui still had some antibiotics on him, but how much could the medicine that one person carried do in this situation? Besides, that was all of Wang Fugui's life savings, so why would he selflessly give it up to those people? When they were about to leave the place, Zhongwu gathered her students to follow close behind. In any case, Zhongwu would have her students do whatever Ren Xiaosu was doing. As everyone looked at the sick people around them, it was inevitable they would feel a little gloomy. But what could they do? Some of the kinder students said to Zhongwu, Teacher, why don't we stay behind and help them? Zhongwu clenched her teeth in a dilemma. She decided, no, we need to learn to save ourselves first. Perhaps I'm teaching you the wrong things right now, but you guys must leave with me straight away. This world had forced such a gentle and kind teacher into a corner, but she did not regret it. Stay close and don't fall behind, everyone. Do you still remember the wild vegetables we ate yesterday? Pick them if you spot any by the road, Zhongwu said. But those wild vegetables taste horrible, a student muttered with his head lowered. Even if it tastes horrible, you still have to eat it, Zhongwu said firmly. With Ren Xiaosu getting up to leave, the escapees who could still move tagged along. They felt aimless and only knew how to follow whoever took the lead. In the end, only the sick people were left lying on the ground. Ren Xiaosu was puzzled. He knew the wolves had been following them all this while, but they had not come out to attack the group. Why was that? It was clear these people were no threat to them, so could it be the wolves were deterred by the number of people in the group? What about the experimentals? Ren Xiaosu was hoping that they had gone northwards from the Jing Mountains with the Qing Consortium's people. That way, he would not have to worry too much about their threat. Of course, if the experimentals perished in that volcanic eruption, it would even be better. Ren Xiaosu still couldn't determine how many experimentals there were or who had created them. He only understood that this world was not as simple as he had thought it was. At this moment, the escapees were mostly avoiding Ren Xiaosu and company as they made their way along. Ren Xiaosu had deliberately refrained from showing his superpower to the escapees because they still had to go to Stronghold 109. Who knew what they did to supernatural beings over there? What if they started arresting such people when they saw them, just like what had happened in Stronghold 113? As Chen Wudi had already exposed himself as a supernatural being, this could end up becoming troublesome for them. Ren Xiaosu felt a bit uncertain, but they could only take it one step at a time. Ren Xiaosu found it quite funny when he saw another stationary off-road vehicle up ahead. He remembered there were 3 off-road vehicles and 2 military transport trucks when the Qing Consortium drove past them. But now, more than half of them had broken down. While making their escape yesterday, they had seen an off-road vehicle and a military transport truck parked on the side of the road. And now, yet another vehicle was dumped midway. Ren Xiaosu thought that if they hurried up, they might just catch up to the Qing Consortium's people. After all, they couldn't fit so many people into the remaining vehicles after 3 had broken down. Therefore, some of them must be traveling on foot. Luolan would probably have his soldiers walk slowly to their destination while he went on ahead to Stronghold 109 in one of the remaining off-road vehicles or military transport trucks. As the evening sun shone down on them, the escapees furthest up front raised a ruckus. Someone shouted, "Everyone, look! It's the people from the Qing Consortium." Someone shouted, "Let's get help from them. We've finally met up with the troops." They did not even consider whether the combat brigade was willing to let them join their group and madly dashed up to the front. It was as though they were trying to grab onto a lifeline. Ren Xiaosu looked up when he heard the commotion. He was surprised to see Luolan sitting in the scarlet sunset with several hundred of the Qing Consortium's combat troops. Why had this fatty only walked until here? Furthermore, Ren Xiaosu felt that Luolan's pants looked a little funny. Upon closer inspection, why did his pants seem like they were made from 2 leather seat covers stitched together? At this moment, Luolan was ordering the soldiers to set up their tents. But when he turned around, he nearly jumped out of his skin. There was a large, dense crowd of people closing on them. He quickly said to the troops, "Quick, those carrying firearms, take them out and prevent the escapees from invading our campsite." As the Qing Consortium's troops were combat-oriented, the sounds of weapons being cocked reverberated right after Luolan finished speaking. When the escapees saw the guns pointing in their direction, everyone stopped in their tracks. They were at a loss. A middle-aged man shouted from a distance, "Boss Luo, I'm Little Zhang from the planning division. You've met me before." Luolan hawked a loogie and shouted, "Aren't you embarrassed to be called Little Zhang at your age? All of you, move back. We'll open fire if you take another step forward." None of the escapees dared to move. The Qing Consortium did not care about who they were. As long as it were not one of their own, they would treat everyone as their enemies. Ren Xiaosu was observing this scene while hiding behind the crowd. He had hoped the Qing Consortium would not interact with the escapees. After all, it was quite possible he was wanted by them. Of course, Ren Xiaosu felt that these people did not have the excess energy and time for that. Seeing so many of the Qing Consortium's troops wrapped up in bandages, it looked like they had been injured while escaping from the stronghold. But Ren Xiaosu was a little curious. Luolan had not abandoned the soldiers and run off by himself. This surprised him a great deal. But the escapees felt that even though they could not get near the Qing consortium, it would be good enough to follow them. So they decided to rest on the spot. When the Qing consortium set off, they would quietly follow them. At the very least, the Qing consortium would know how to get to Stronghold 109, right? Besides, now that there was clearly no more space in the Qing consortium's vehicles, the majority of those from the Qing consortium had to travel on foot. As such, the escapees were not worried they would get shaken off by them. Xiaosu, will there be any danger if we stick so close to the Qing consortium? Wang Fugui asked in worry. After all, Ren Xiaosu had killed several of their people who were keeping watch at the school when the earthquake struck. It should be fine. Ren Xiaosu stole a glance at the Qing consortium. Currently, the Qing consortium and the escapees were separated by an open area. It seemed like the Qing consortium's people did not intend to make any contact with them. It was better this way since the Qing consortium would not know Ren Xiaosu was here. Y'all can stay here without worries. Ren Xiaosu cautiously reminded them, if the situation does not seem right, we'll escape into the wilderness. Based on the current situation, it's better to stay with everyone else for the time being. I'm a little worried the wolves will try to pick off vulnerable targets if we get separated from the group. The wolves did not dare to attack a group numbering several thousand people, but it would be hard to say what they'd do if Ren Xiaosu and company dropped out of the group. Actually, Luo Lan was not thinking about capturing Ren Xiaosu at all costs. When Qing Zhen was about to call him on the satellite phone and issue an arrest on Ren Xiaosu, the volcanic cloud happened to block out the signal. By the time Qing Zhen reached a spot where there was a signal, Stronghold 113 had already been destroyed. In his haste, Luo Lan did not take his satellite phone with him while making his escape. So they two of them couldn't contact each other. Sure, whatever you say. Wang Fugui nodded. Ren Xiaosu went to gather for firewood as usual to start a fire and even brought Chen Wudi along with him. It was not that he wanted to order Chen Wudi around, but that he wanted to guard against him in case he really had other motives for joining their group. In their group, only Ren Xiaosu could keep Chen Wudi in check. So it was better to keep him by his side. It was definitely a little tiring to keep guarding against someone, but Ren Xiaosu felt there was nothing wrong with being extra cautious. As they still had a long journey ahead, Ren Xiaosu would accept Chen Wudi if he later proved to have no other motives. On their way to gather firewood, Ren Xiaosu found that the escapees had wisened up. They knew it would be very difficult to get to Stronghold 109 if they did not have a campfire to keep themselves warm. As such, a lot of people went to gather firewood and even shamelessly borrowed other people's fire to start their own. It was quite a spectacular sight seeing several thousand people gathering firewood together. Ren Xiaosu lamented he might have been too late in going out to collect the firewood. He mainly had not expected such a situation to occur. As he was late by a few minutes, Ren Xiaosu could not find any firewood even after walking around for a long time. Beside him, Chen Wudi asked, "Master, didn't you say that the Western Paradise was just ahead of us this morning? Why aren't we there yet even after walking for a day?" Ren Xiaosu was speechless. He thought for a while and said, "The Western Paradise has shifted elsewhere." Chen Wudi said unhappily, "Master, do you think I'm dumb?" Ren Xiaosu gave a mental sigh. Indeed, even a fool would not get deceived by such an answer. Wudi. Ren Xiaosu earnestly tried to change the subject. "Do you have any other wishes besides accompanying me to obtain the Buddhist scriptures in the Western Paradise?" Ren Xiaosu was thinking of chatting with Chen Wudi for a while longer. After all, loose lips sank ships. As long as Chen Wudi's thoughts were impure, he would reveal something if he spoke enough. But he realized Chen Wudi was behaving awkwardly. "Yeah, I have another wish." "What is it?" Ren Xiaosu asked. "I'm looking for a girl named Zixia." Chen Wudi said in a serious tone, "I have two things that I must complete in this reincarnation of mine. One is to escort Master to obtain the scriptures, and the other is to find Zixia 1. Ren Xiaosu turned to his side and stared blankly at Chen Wudi. Which version of Journey to the West did you read? Even though he carefully recalled all the versions of Journey to the West he had read, he could not remember any woman named Zixia. Suddenly, Zhang Wu came walking over from the opposite direction. She and her students were carrying a lot of firewood in their arms. When Zhang Wu saw Ren Xiaosu, her eyes lit up. You guys don't have to collect any firewood. We've already helped you gather plenty. Strength in numbers, as they said. With Zhang Wu leading 28 students to collect the firewood, it was much faster than if Ren Xiaosu had collected it alone. Not only that, Ren Xiaosu estimated that the firewood they were carrying should be enough for 4 or 5 campfires. Ren Xiaosu did not reject her and nodded. It was a good thing she intended to return the favor, and he did not mind her kind gesture. He saw several female students looking at Chen Wudi in embarrassment. They walked over hesitantly and said to him, "You're so handsome." Chen Wudi was stunned before replying, "Thank you, female almsgivers." The words female almsgivers were like buckets of cold water that immediately extinguished any romantic thoughts the young women had. Ren Xiaosu ignored them as he walked to the front. He shouted as he walked, "Come, come, I've discovered some good things. Sometimes, nature is very generous in gifting. As long as you have a good pair of seeking eyes, you would definitely not starve to death." Just as Ren Xiaosu was about to turn around, he suddenly saw that something was off about the patch of wild grass in front of him. Taking a closer look, he realized it was a sweet potato field. He did not know how long this sweet potato field had been growing in the wilderness. Furthermore, this was the season sweet potatoes were the most delicious. Ren Xiaosu turned around and said to Zhang Wu, "What are you still standing around for? Have your students start digging." "Oh, okay." Zhang Wu reacted immediately as she beckoned her students to start digging. Honestly, if not for Ren Xiaosu, she would not know there were so many sweet potatoes growing underground. They had to hurry before the other escapees found out. Otherwise, there wouldn't be many sweet potatoes left for them. There were simply too many escapees. As Zhang Wu dug for the sweet potatoes with her students, she constantly stole glances at Ren Xiaosu. This young man was always full of surprises, which gradually turned into a strange kind of dependence for her. Zhang Wu felt that as long as they followed Ren Xiaosu, they would make it to Stronghold 109 alive. Within a minute, all of the other escapees rushed over once they learned of the situation here. No one dared to vie with Ren Xiaosu for the sweet potatoes. But as the field was huge, there were still many other spots for them to dig. Ren Xiaosu did not care about the others. He and Chen Wudi dug up more than 30 sweet potatoes before they finally stopped. These sweet potatoes were shockingly large, so they wouldn't have to worry about their provisions for the next few days at least. When he got up from the ground and looked around him, he was shocked to see that the entire sweet potato field had almost been stripped bare by the escapees. Even a locust swarm was not that terrifying. Eventually, the entire campsite was suffused with an enchantingly sweet aroma. In the night, it seemed like countless lamps had been lit in the dark, and the desolate wasteland was flickering with yellow lights. Many people were watching with great anticipation as the sweet potatoes roasted in the campfires. The sweet potatoes were each as large as a liquor bottle. When Chen Wudi ate 3 of them in one sitting, Ren Xiaosu was shocked. He suddenly felt that Chen Wudi had acknowledged him as his master, probably so that he could scrounge all his food. As Chen Wudi wiped his mouth clean, he looked at the people around him, Ren Xiaosu, Wang Fugui, Yan Liuyuan, Xiaoyu, and Wang Dalong. "What are you looking at?" Ren Xiaosu gave him a look. "Master, don't you think that our group's still missing something?" Chen Wudi asked. Ren Xiaosu was stunned for a moment. "What are we missing?" Chen Wudi's gaze kept wandering back and forth between Yan Liuyuan and Xiaoyu. "We're still missing a white dragon horse one." Yan Liuyuan and Xiaoyu both felt sick. However, Chen Wudi had principles. He said, you two don't have to look at me like that. Neither of you is the white dragon horse. I won't acknowledge just anyone. Wang Fugui and Wang Dalong felt uncomfortable again. Could this mean the two of them were really Pigsy and Friar Sand? Ren Xiaosu was speechless and a little melancholic. Their group had been quite normal, but why did the group become weird after Chen Wudi joined them? But Ren Xiaosu was more surprised by the fact that Chen Wudi had a logic system he abided by even though he was insane. So why had he acknowledged Ren Xiaosu as his master? He ignored Chen Wudi as he quietly estimated everyone's food intake. Currently, the sweet potatoes they had should be enough for them to survive on for the next 2 days. Furthermore, food like sweet potatoes might not turn bad even if they were kept past winter. However, it would be a little tiring to carry them as they pushed on towards Stronghold 109. After all, sweet potatoes were rather heavy. They were only about 100 kilometers away from Stronghold 109. Calculating the distance the average person could travel in 8 hours, it was about 40 kilometers a day. If the intensity were higher, it might be possible to walk 50 kilometers. However, Wang Fugui, Wang Dalong, and Xiaohu probably couldn't take it. In the afternoon, Xiaohu took a sewing needle and helped Yan Liuyuan pop the newly formed blisters on his feet by pricking them. As Yan Liuyuan quietly watched the profile of her face, he felt it was really good to have a sister like her. By this time, the blisters on the escapees' feet had burst and scabbed over and over again. Fleeing as far as they could was not simply a matter of how many kilometers can they travel in a day. Therefore, Ren Xiaosu estimated it would take at least 3 days for them to get to Stronghold 109. They did not even have to go out to search for food again if they rationed their sweet potatoes properly. Suddenly, Ren Xiaosu heard Zhang Wu speaking from a short distance behind him, "Everyone, let's hang in there a bit more. We'll reach Stronghold 109 very soon. Remember to bring along the sweet potatoes we dug up in the afternoon. Although it might get tiring as we travel, it's better than going hungry." These sheltered students had already passed the stage of homesickness and vulnerability as they learned how to be strong. Someone suddenly asked, "Teacher, can we really get to Stronghold 109 safely?" "Definitely." Zhang Wu said, "As long as we follow that young man, we'll definitely get there." At this moment, some students winked and raised their eyebrows at Zhang Wu, telling her to look behind her. Zhang Wu happened to lock eyes with Ren Xiaosu the moment she turned around. She exclaimed and quickly turned away. Her cheeks glowed so red it looked like a campfire was illuminating them. Zhang Wu lowered her voice and whispered to her students, "Why didn't you all tell me earlier?" "Haha," the students laughed and said, "Teacher is embarrassed." When Ren Xiaosu watched this happen, he realized humans were probably the best at finding joy amid hardship among all living things. If they could see a little hope, they would want to keep living. After a while, Zhang Wu's students started singing in soft voices of what sounded like schoolyard songs. Ren Xiaosu fell into a trance as he listened to their singing. He had also wanted to live in a stronghold free from worries so that he could enjoy a comfortable life. But of course, life in the stronghold was probably no longer as comfortable. At the Qing Consortium's campsite a distance away, Luolan could smell the roasted sweet potatoes. While eating the combat rations taken from the combat brigade's vehicle, he sighed, "These poor people really know how to live." Beside him, Luolan's trusted aide asked, "Boss, do you think your brother will send someone to rescue you?" "I don't know." Luolan was sad. "I'm worried about him instead. He was still in the Jing Mountains when things went wrong, and nobody knows whether he's dead or alive." Luolan's trusted aide muttered, "I think Boss Qing Zhen will be fine. You can always count on him to get things done. He's that reliable." "Reliable?" Luolan sighed. "Didn't an accident still happen all the same?" "But of course, earthquakes and volcanic eruptions are natural disasters. They're unstoppable forces." "Do you think the same thing happened to Stronghold 112, his trusted aide asked. "After all, the distance of the two strongholds from the Jing Mountains is about the same. If our side could not stand up to the earthquake's destruction, it should be the same on their side as well. That's right. Luo Lan thought for a while and said, I'm afraid Stronghold 112 might have collapsed as well. With the Qing Consortium suddenly losing two strongholds, Qing Zhen will probably get severely punished by the consortium. But it's not our fault either. His trusted aide said softly, it would still have collapsed no matter who was in charge. Qing Zhen has too many enemies within the consortium itself. Luo Lan said, furthermore, he recently killed a lot of the other consortium's members. The consortium is probably worried it will become too difficult to keep him in check, so they might as well hang him out to dry. However, that'll all be temporary since the Qing Consortium still needs him to do their work. Indeed, the others can't perform as well as Qing Zhen can, rather, they are not as ruthless as he is. At this moment, Qing Zhen was still trekking on the paths within the Jing Mountains. His face had been blackened by the soot that had gushed out of the eruption, flushing his image down the drain. Next to Qing Zhen, Su Man said as he held the satellite phone, "Boss, the board would like to speak with you." By this time, they had walked out of the cover of the volcanic ash cloud, and the satellite phone's signal had been restored to normal. "Tell them I don't have free time," Qing Zhen said, sounding peeved. Su Man felt conflicted but still conveyed the message exactly as it was said. After a few seconds, he looked at Qing Zhen. "They're requesting you to immediately go to Stronghold 111 to be investigated once we get out of the Jing Mountains. Without their permission, you're not to leave Stronghold 111. Stronghold 112 and Stronghold 113 have been destroyed, tell them I understand," Qing Zhen said, uncaring. Su Man hung up after replying to the other party in the call, then said to Qing Zhen, "Are they planning to put you under house arrest? It's been a long while since we've gone to Stronghold 111. Qing Zhen said, "Call Stronghold 109 SLUUN and have him send someone to search for Luo Lan." Su Man hesitated and said, "As a Stronghold overseer, Luun might not have the authority to do much in a stronghold that's controlled by the Li Consortium. He should still have some authority when it comes to deploying a few private troops. Since Stronghold 109 is the closest to Stronghold 113, Luo Lan will definitely escape to Luun's side if nothing happened to him." Qing Zhen looked up at the grey skies behind him and said, "Tell him that if he can't locate Luo Lan, death awaits him." Su Man suddenly felt that Qing Zhen did not seem like someone who was going to be placed under house arrest and be investigated by the consortium. Moreover, the relationship between Qing Zhen and Luo Lan felt much better than what the rumors said. "What do you know?" Luo Lan scolded angrily, "Am I that kind of person? If the consortium wants me to kill those from the Pyro Company right now, I would do it without batting an eyelid. But what would they say about me if it gets found out that I snatched food from a group of escapees? But the sweet potato field has already been dug clean by them," Tang Zhou said awkwardly. There were over 3,000 escapees in total. The sweet potato field was not the result of scaled-up agriculture, but one that had sprouted up in the wild since who knew when. It was not easy for these escapees who had been starving for several days to find something to eat. So they would definitely dig up everything they could find. Even if they could not finish eating the sweet potatoes, they could take them with them on the road. At the least, they would not have to go hungry again for the next few days. Only people who had gone hungry before would understand what it felt like to be starving. Seeing that it was only a few days since their escape, all of the escapees had slimmed down quite a bit. Only Ren Xiaosu and company did not seem like they had changed much in appearance. Luo Lan thought about it for a long time. "Those of you who brought money with you, go and buy some from them." Luo Lan did not have the time to bring anything with him during his escape. Otherwise, he would have put on pants. It was almost the same for the combat brigade soldiers as well. As the earthquake happened too suddenly, nearly all those who had the thought to retrieve their money were buried underneath houses. The soldiers looked at each other as they pooled their money. Finally, they managed to come up with 4,000 yuan that was made up of whatever spare change they usually carried in their pockets. Luo Lan looked at the money with glimmering eyes. Tang Zhou, take some people over and buy the food. Be careful not to get attacked by them. Got it. Tang Zhou led a combat platoon with him. The combat platoons that were lucky to survive had been reorganized into new teams. Although the wounded would not have to join the battles, at least 2/3 out of 200 troops could still fight. Luo Lan did not forget to tell them, buy it at 50 times the usual price and don't disgrace the Qing consortium. We don't take advantage of others. Food was obviously more important than money at this time, but whether offering 50 times the normal price was worth it would depend on the point of view. They would get back human civilization someday and might even reach Stronghold 109 in another 3 days if they walked a bit faster. At that time, they would need money to buy things. Although the Qing consortium only had a so-so relationship with the Li consortium, they still had some businesses and assets in Stronghold 109. Therefore, the money issued by the Qing consortium would still have some purchasing power. The relationship between the organizations was very complicated. It was not like a stronghold controlled by the Li consortium would not be influenced by the other organizations. Most of the time, the distribution of influence between the organizations was interconnected in a complex fashion. As the various strongholds were in different locations, it meant they controlled different natural resources. So there was a mutual dependency between the corporations. For example, the areas controlled by the Qing consortium were mainly rich in vanadium titanomagnetite ore, halite, mirabilite, descloisite, sulfur, iron ore, asbestos, mica, gold, phosphorus, limestone, coal, and natural gas, while the Li consortium controlled south had non-ferrous metals, coal mines, and an agriculture industry that produced an abundance of tobacco leaves. But the most important fact was that the Qing consortium was situated in a climate-friendly basin. They controlled the planting of food crops such as rice, wheat, corn, soybeans, and cash crops like tea leaves. The Li consortium had to purchase such food commodities from the Qing consortium on many occasions. Although they also grew these crops, their own supply was inadequate. Every organization placed a great deal of importance on agriculture. But it didn't automatically mean that the land they controlled would be suitable for growing such crops just because it was a priority for them. Nature would not bend to suit human will. Soon after, Tang Zhou and his men returned with a lot of sweet potatoes in their arms. Not many people would dare to refuse the request of the Qing consortium when they saw their soldiers approaching them with guns and offering to buy their sweet potatoes. Moreover, the Qing consortium was not lowballing them. Luo Lan excitedly ordered the soldiers to throw the sweet potatoes into the fire. Then the group waited eagerly for them to be cooked. Luo Lan counted the number of people and sweet potatoes they had, then said with a sigh, each of us can only eat half of one, no one is to eat more. The wounded can eat a whole sweet potato by themselves. When the sweet potatoes were ready for consumption, Tang Zhou used a stick to retrieve one out of the fire for Luo Lan. Here, boss, eat up. Luo Lan picked it up, broke it in half, and handed a piece to Tang Zhou. We'll each have half. Boss, you don't have to share it. Tang Zhou was a little hesitant. Are you going to eat half as well? Cut the crap and take it. It's really hot. Luo Lan looked at the others and said, I have no time to prattle on with you. When we get to Stronghold 109, I'll take everyone out for a good time. He, we're bound for good fortune after surviving a huge disaster. The combat brigade's troops ate their sweet potatoes without a word. Ren Xiaosu had been observing the actions of the Qing consortium. But a woman in the escapee group suddenly screamed. It was followed by an audible slap. They turned around and saw a middle-aged man tussling with a woman. He said, You're still pretending to be decent after eating the sweet potato that I found? Your husband died in the stronghold. If it weren't for me, do you think you'd survived until now? I said that I would pay you for the sweet potato when we got to Stronghold 109, said the woman through clenched teeth. What are you going to pay me with? When we get to stronghold 109, everyone will still be penniless. Ren Xiaosu scowled. These two people knew each other? The man was probably slapped for making indecent advances on her just now. In his anger and embarrassment, he dragged the woman and headed for the secluded wilderness. The woman was crying out but couldn't put up a fight. However, everyone watched indifferently. But then, a shout rang out beside Ren Xiaosu, "Stop it! So it's you, King of the Southern Mountains one, who's causing trouble around here." This shout was so loud it kept ringing in Ren Xiaosu's ears. He looked at Chen Wudi with a stunned expression, only to see him rushing towards the two with his golden hooked rod out. That middle-aged man could not react in time and got blasted to the ground by Chen Wudi's staff strike and nearly vomited blood. Chen Wudi even held back a little. Otherwise, the man would have died on the spot. But before Chen Wudi could bask in the glory of subduing a demon, the woman who got dragged out by the man became angry. She looked at Chen Wudi and said, "Why did you hit him? Get lost." Chen Wudi felt a little aggrieved but could not understand what was going on with them. He could only walk back to Ren Xiaosu while hanging his head. Everyone was surprised to see this outcome. Only Ren Xiaosu, who had read the original text of Journey to the West, felt that something was off. The king of the southern mountains was the demon king of the hidden Misty Mountain, Bent Peak and Linked Cave in Journey to the West. In the original story, this demon king took a liking to a farmer's wife and took her for himself. However, Ren Xiaosu felt that something was odd here, because he realized that whenever Chen Wudi was about to hit someone, he would always assign them a demon name, such as Xiaozuan Feng, king of the southern mountains, and so on. When he wasn't going to fight them, the other party would just be a normal human being to him. This seemed to be the logic of a mental patient for affirming their own reasons and stance on a matter. He was the great sage equal to heaven, so he must battle demons. Ren Xiaosu stared blankly at Chen Wudi after he rejoined him. He thought for a moment and teased, "My disciple, what will you do if you start running out of demon names to use when you encounter more and more enemies?" After all, there was only a finite number of demons in Journey to the West. Once he finished battling all of them, there would be no one left for him to fight. Chen Wudi sank deep into thought as though this were a real possibility. But after a while, Chen Wudi decided to bend his principles and said, "It's all right, I can just recycle the demon names." Ren Xiaosu didn't know what to say. Was he stupid or just playing dumb? Didn't he say he would not acknowledge just anyone? Ren Xiaosu kept quiet. He wanted to tell Chen Wudi that human nature was complicated and some people were just not worth saving. But he was also worried that he would destroy Chen Wudi's innocence. If there really were a great sage in times like these who ended up getting persuaded by Ren Xiaosu to become an ordinary mortal, he wondered if he would have done a good or bad thing. Ren Xiaosu did not know if it would be a good thing or not if he managed to persuade a real great sage to become a normal person in this world. But at this moment, Wang Fugui chuckled next to him. "You're too much of a busybody. You would have saved yourself a lot of trouble if you adopted the mindsets of none of your business and none of my business in your life." "What do you mean?" Chen Wudi looked up, stunned. "Look here," Wang Fugui said earnestly, "why do you have to poke your nose into this matter for no good reason?" "If you don't poke your nose, it's none of your business," interrupted Chen Wudi. Wang Fugui was speechless. "Ha ha ha!" Ren Xiaosu, Yan Liuyuan and Xiao were convulsing with laughter. It was great that Chen Wudi had already mastered the use of the phrase "none of your business." As for whether he could learn "none of my business," Ren Xiaosu felt that it depended on whether Chen Wudi was willing to learn it. The next morning, Ren Xiaosu and company got up early and roasted some sweet potatoes to eat. A lot of people preferred to sleep for a while longer than to get up and eat. In reality, if they did not eat in the morning during this season, their bodies would remain cold for the rest of the day. Ren Xiaosu saw that the Qing Consortium's people had also gotten up. After all, the combat troops were different from the escapees in that they had a certain regimen to follow. The conditions of the escapees were much better today. As usual, some of them still fell sick and went down with a fever, but it was not that many of them. When the Qing consortium started moving off, the escapees followed. Everyone silently and eagerly followed the Qing consortium as they did not want to lose sight of them. Ren Xiaosu glanced at the group of escapees and discovered that the king of the southern mountains who had been beaten up by Chen Wudi last night was lying on the ground taking his last breaths. The woman who was with him had already rejoined the larger group and blended into the crowd. Lying on the ground with no help from anyone would lead to certain death. Actually, if what this unfortunate fellow had said was true, that woman not only should have been taken good care of by him in the stronghold, she was also only able to escape the stronghold with his help. But once he was in trouble, that woman decisively abandoned him. In a world like this, there was no saying who deserved death more. Ren Xiaosu looked over to the Qing consortium's people. The remaining 2 vehicles were now driving very slowly. Those who couldn't fit into the vehicles had to keep up next to them on foot. But Ren Xiaosu was surprised to see Luo Lan walking on foot as well instead of riding in a vehicle. Why? Was he working out to get fitter? Then Ren Xiaosu made a careful observation. Just which soldiers were allowed to ride in the vehicles? There shouldn't be anyone more important than Luo Lan, right? Ren Xiaosu was stunned by his observation. He saw the bandaged wounded in the back of the military transport truck and in the off-road vehicle. The truck was also half-loaded with firearms and munitions. The firearms and munitions were definitely indispensable. Even if the soldiers were forced to walk, they would still have to bring those along with them. After all, those were their only means of protecting their lives. The soldiers had helped Luo Lan force his way through a blockade of the face bugs, so Luo Lan allowed them to ride in the vehicles instead of himself. The walking wounded still existed, but it was only because the vehicles were filled to the brim with people. Those who could still walk didn't get into the vehicles. But the wounded who weren't in the vehicles were neither depressed nor resentful. It even seemed to Ren Xiaosu like they were chatting and laughing during the march. Ren Xiaosu had thought Luo Lan would just abandon the wounded and drive straight to Stronghold 109 by himself. But what really happened was a total surprise to him. These 2 brothers, Qing Zhen and Luo Lan, it was no wonder that even a supernatural being was willing to die for Qing Zhen. In reality, Ren Xiaosu did not know the deceased supernatural being was not hired by Qing Zhen but was originally a soldier within the ranks of Qing Zhen's combat brigade. After awakening his power, he instantly became Qing Zhen's bodyguard and remained loyal and devoted to him. That night, Ren Xiaosu felt an inexplicable sense of unease. Even Xiaoyu noticed his perturbation. Xiaoyu asked, "Xiaosu, what's the matter?" "It's nothing." Ren Xiaosu looked at the campfire and shook his head. "I just feel like something's off." But he couldn't figure out what was wrong. It felt like he was back at the extremely dangerous Jing Mountains. The night was pitch black, enveloping them like a prison cell. "Let's go." Ren Xiaosu extinguished their campfire with his feet. "We can't stay here any longer tonight." After much deliberation, he still believed his intuition, because his intuition had saved him on more than one occasion. Zhang Jinglin had once said that scientists from before the cataclysm proved gut feelings were real. When Ren Xiaosu stood up and extinguished the campfire, the escapees around them stared at him with puzzled looks on their faces. Zhang Wu reacted the quickest to it. Before the others could figure out what was going on, she was already urging the students to follow suit. Although she didn't know what was going on, she knew that there was no wrong in escaping with Ren Xiaosu. Someone wondered, has that young man gone crazy? "I have no idea." "Bro, where are we going?" Yan Liuyuan asked. "I don't know." Ren Xiaosu said, "We'll talk after we get out of here." But just as they separated from the group of escapees and were about to bypass the Qing consortium's campsite, Ren Xiaosu heard from behind him the sound of chains being dragged across the ground. Furthermore, the sound was closing in. "Run!" Ren Xiaosu yelled in a low voice. He was probably the only person among the countless escapees who knew what was coming from behind them. When he saw a pack of experimentals making a rush at him in the Jing Mountains, he instinctively retreated and fled. He didn't even hesitate, knowing that he would have to turn around and face the Qing consortium instead. At that time, Ren Xiaosu could not determine exactly how many experimentals there were. He only knew that if he did not run, he would surely die there. Ren Xiaosu had been worrying about the wolf pack and experimentals for the past 2 days. His worries would not dissipate until the day he got to Stronghold 109. He had hoped that the destroyed stronghold would attract the experimentals and wolves to it. But now, it seemed like all hope was lost. They could only make use of whatever time they had left to escape. Although, Ren Xiaosu was a little confused by this. The experimentals had only been active within the perimeter of the forest. Why had all of them come out now? Wang Fugui and the others did not know why Ren Xiaosu told them to run, but they had already started trusting him. What about the sweet potatoes? Wang Dalong shouted as he ran. Wang Fugui turned around and smacked away all the sweet potatoes in Wang Dalong's arms. How can you eat the sweet potatoes when you're dead? Quickly follow Ren Xiaosu. The sound of the chains coming from behind the escapees was growing louder. When everyone turned to look back, they saw the experimentals scampering across the ground like spiders as they approached. They looked like demons. It wasn't until this moment that the escapees started screaming in horror before fleeing for their lives. But the size of the escapee group was too large. The people at the front were still unsure of what was going on, while those at the rear were already running madly for their lives. As a result, a lot of people were knocked down as they collided into one another. Terrified screams could be heard at the back of the crowd. Hundreds of experimentals had rushed into the group and started hunting and killing maniacally. Once they killed someone, they did not hesitate to pounce onto others. It was as though they wanted to finish off all of the escapees. When Ren Xiaosu looked back, he noticed another experimental walking upright behind the maniacal experimentals. It was staring at them coldly. Ren Xiaosu realized someone else might be controlling these experimentals. They had not yet lost all of their intelligence. Did the volcanic eruption reduce their numbers? But that was a good thing. Ren Xiaosu could not wish more for them to die inside the Jing Mountains. The more, the merrier. As he ran with his group, he shouted at the Qing consortium from afar, "Don't open fire. We have to escape together." Ren Xiaosu frowned as he was worried the Qing consortium would start shooting indiscriminately. If the Qing consortium troops took up firing positions, he would have to use his shadow clone to force his way out of this place. Chen Wudi suddenly muttered as he looked at Ren Xiaosu, "Master, you have too much aggression in your current life. But it's much better than your previous life where you were too indecisive." Chen Wudi turned around to look and saw a bloody scene behind them. As the experimentals murdered their victims, they did so in an exceedingly brutal manner. Blood was splattering everywhere. The cries and screams sounded like they were all muffled as though purgatory were behind them. Agony. This was the agony of the mortal world. Chen Wudi's golden hooped rod materialized in his hand. The idea of subduing evil was stirring in him. But as there were too many experimentals, he couldn't possibly defeat them all by himself. At this moment, a faint golden glow seemed to shimmer around Chen Wudi's body. Ren Xiaosu did not see it as he was busy protecting Xiaowu and the others who were fleeing up ahead. The glow came from the golden chainmail armor and the phoenix feather cap as recorded in Journey to the West. But before all of these could fully materialize, a golden band appeared on Chen Wudi's head. Then the golden armor and phoenix feather cap one vanished at the same time. Chen Wudi stood still and looked at the ferocious experimentals. "Forget it, I'd better go to the Heavenly Palace to request reinforcements." "Master, wait for me." Chen Wudi turned around and ran away. Ren Xiaosu turned his head and shouted at Chen Wudi, "Disciple, help our guys carry their luggage." If Wang Fugui, Wang Dalong and Xiaowu got slowed down during their escape, they might not be able to outrun the escapees. Moreover, Chen Wudi's strength was even greater than Ren Xiaosu's, so it was not going to be a problem for him to carry a few of their luggage bags. By now, the Qing consortium had realized the chaos. Although the escapees had blocked their field of view, which made them unsure of what was happening, Luo Lan did not hesitate in this time of chaos. He ordered all of the Qing consortium's combat troops to quickly retreat. Even with the escapees rushing towards them, the Qing consortium was still running ahead of them. As Luo Lan fled for his life, he shouted to those in the vehicles, "You leave first. It's quicker to get away with the vehicles." The wounded soldiers on the vehicles fell silent. Someone said, "We can't leave you behind." Luo Lan panted as he said, "Hurry up and get lost. Why is a group of wounded people acting all melodramatic?" The wounded soldiers in the vehicles could see from their relatively elevated position that the experimentals were claiming the lives of the escapees with super high efficiency. Based on their speed, it would be impossible for normal humans to escape from their pursuit even if they ran with all they had. It would have been good if the experimentals were attracted by the humans at the back of the group who could not run fast enough. But the experimentals did not seem hesitant in leaving behind their food they'd killed. They were looking to finish off everyone here. The legendary saying, "You don't have to run faster than the bear to get away. You just have to run faster than the guy next to you," was no longer applicable. Everyone here had to die. The wounded soldiers did not obey Luo Lan's order to leave, decisively stopping the vehicles and unloading the firearms and munitions to the ground. Luo Lan's trusted aide, Tang Zhou, ordered the combatants to quickly form a defensive firing line. He shouted, "I need 2 men to get in a vehicle and escort the boss out of this place." Tang Zhou's decision was the correct one. With so many of them here, only 1/3 of their total strength could fit into the vehicles, while the remaining 2/3 could not outrun the experimentals. Moreover, the group of escapees was getting killed so quickly it wouldn't be possible to buy them much time. Tang Zhou knew very well they couldn't kill the experimentals either. When Qing Zhen first caught an experimental, he immediately fed the data to Luo Lan. Hence, someone had to be sacrificed. "What are you all waiting for? Waiting to die together?" Tang Zhou said coldly. He pointed at 2 of the younger soldiers and said, "You two, take the boss and leave." By selecting these 2 soldiers, he was giving them a chance to keep living. He picked them because they were still young and did not get a chance to savor life yet. The other soldiers fell silent. They also knew the consequences of having to stay behind, but no one stepped forward to protest Tang Zhou's decision. "Fuck, let go of me." Luo Lan was carried away by the 2 young soldiers. He immediately turned anxious as he tried to break free from the 2 soldiers. He said, "Are you trying to rebel?" "I, Luo Lan, have never been a deserter before." Tang Zhou smiled and said, "Thanks to both you and boss Qing Zhen for taking care of me over the years." He then said firmly to the 2 young soldiers, "Quickly get the boss into the vehicle." Ren Xiaosu had just led Xiaowu and company to the front of the Qing consortium's people. Zhang Wu was also following close behind them with her students. However, the Qing consortium soldiers did not care and allowed them and several other escapees to pass through the openings in their defensive line. Tang Zhou looked calmly ahead as the escapees were chased down by the experimentals. The experimentals were getting closer and closer to them, but he had to wait for an opportune moment. Platoons 1 through 5, get ready to shoot. Platoon 6, be on standby to replace them on the firing line. The wounded soldiers will be responsible for passing along ammo for reloading. Tang Zhou's calm voice echoed in the soldiers' ears. Then he opened up a box on the ground and took out a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. Tang Zhou smiled happily and said, "Luckily for us, we brought along this thing." The escapees were wiped out by the experimentals in just a few minutes. Tang Zhou knelt on one knee and placed the RPG launcher onto his shoulder. When the first experimental appeared in his line of sight, Tang Zhou calmly said, "Open fire." With a loud bang, the grenade fired out of the launcher on his shoulder. The momentary burst of power whistled like it had been sent from heaven as the RPG hit hell via earth. Ren Xiaosu looked behind him and realized the Qing Consortium's combat troops were unusually calm and unperturbed in the face of death. Clearly, this should have been a very touching sight, but there was hardly any drama. It was as though it were a trivial matter. Luolan was dragged into the off-road vehicle by the two soldiers. Then they sped off for Stronghold 109. But at this moment, a surprising turn of events happened. Ren Xiaosu suddenly saw as many as 9 experimentals approaching them from nowhere on both sides. The experimentals had circled around the sides of the Qing Consortium's defensive line, and 4 of the experimentals rushed in from the rear at Tang Zhou. Ren Xiaosu knew it was all over for Tang Zhou and his men. Footnotes. Some of the soldiers fired at the experimentals, but their opponents swiftly dodged the bullets. It was simply too difficult to hit their targets. Suddenly, a wounded soldier pounced up and grabbed both legs of an experimental with a grenade in his other hand. With a loud boom, the wounded soldier and experimental were blown away by the explosion. Ren Xiaosu realized that not even the experimentals could handle the destructive power of a grenade. The 4 experimentals that pounced onto the defensive line turned into just 3. This gave Tang Zhou and his men some respite. But Ren Xiaosu was most touched by how the wounded soldier still remained calm before his death. There was absolutely no sense of tragedy or any noble last words. It was as though he was just trying to accomplish a trivial task. Ren Xiaosu didn't want to watch any further. The Qing Consortium was challenging his opinion of them. He looked at the remaining experimentals and saw one of them running fast as lightning in the direction of the departing off-road vehicle. It rammed itself straight into the vehicle during its pursuit. When it collided with the off-road vehicle, Ren Xiaosu could even see the entire process of the vehicle's structure crumpling. A moment later, the off-road vehicle lost balance and flipped over. It seemed like the experimental was completely unscathed. That experimental got off the ground and gave a few slight shakes of its head. Then it jumped onto the vehicle and started tearing through the vehicle's metal body. It seemed like it wanted to dismantle the vehicle. However, Ren Xiaosu didn't care about what was going on over there, because the 4 experimentals that had surrounded them were bounding over. Ren Xiaosu shouted, "Chen Wudi, cover the right." By the time Ren Xiaosu finished speaking, he was holding a black saber in his hands. It looked like he had pulled it out of thin air. Instantly, the black saber came into contact with the experimental that pounced at him from the left side. Its body was slashed in half at the waist by the black saber like a knife cutting through hot butter. In the flurry, Wang Fugui was stunned by what he saw. So Ren Xiaosu really was a supernatural being. Be it Ren Xiaosu's speed or strength, they had surpassed the realm of normal people. In fact, Ren Xiaosu was not all that nervous while battling the experimentals, because he had previously fought these things. With the 4 experimentals standing on one side, it was exactly the same situation as before. The only difference was that this time, Chen Wudi was around to help share the burden of fighting them. There was not even a need for Ren Xiaosu to use his shadow clone in the fight. His only concern was that Yan Liuyuan and the others might accidentally get injured during the fight. After all, they had no chance of striking back when facing the experimentals. Ren Xiaosu had raised his saber and slashed it down in one swift motion, dicing that experimental in half at the waist. Then he shouted to Wang Fugui and the others, "All of you, run!" Be it Wang Fugui, Zhang Wu and her students, or even Yan Liuyuan, they were all frightened by the terrifying experimentals. The experimentals were clearly humanoid, as they had the same nose, mouth, arms and body as humans. But be it their behavior or ferocity, it was obvious they were no different from beasts. When Ren Xiaosu saw Wang Fugui and the others not budging, he shouted, "Go on, run!" Yan Liuyuan was the first to react. "Let's go! Don't stay here and be a burden to my brother." As Wang Fugui ran with Yan Liuyuan, those words kept ringing in his mind. It seemed like Yan Liuyuan did not think they would be of any help to Ren Xiaosu. This was even as Wang Fugui and Yan Liuyuan possessed guns. Seeing that they had started fleeing for their lives, Ren Xiaosu finally heaved a sigh of relief. But the danger had not passed yet. Importantly, a lot of experimentals got temporarily halted by Tang Zhou and the Qing Consortium's combat troops. But as their defensive line had been breached by the experimentals from their rear, it would be difficult to say just how much longer they could hang on for. Seeing Tang Zhou and his men's defensive line weakening, the group of experimentals chasing after the escapees also started rushing at the defensive formation. Ren Xiaosu had a frown on his face. Even if Tang Zhou and his men could hold the line for a little longer, how fast could Xiao and the others run? They would probably get quickly caught by the experimentals. Ren Xiaosu looked at the remaining experimental he was fighting against. It seemed like it was hesitating after its companion got killed so easily. As such, it did not pounce at him again in attack for a long time. It started slowly backing off instead. Ren Xiaosu did not intend to tussle with it either. He looked over at Chen Wudi and was stunned by the sight unfolding in front of him. He saw the two experimentals Chen Wudi was fighting already lying on the ground. Chen Wudi was stepping on them as he placed the golden hooped rod over his shoulder with one hand. There was a smug look to him. This left Ren Xiaosu very surprised because he had felt Chen Wudi might not be that strong since he couldn't block a bullet. But now, his combat value was probably much higher than what he had imagined. Unfortunately, as he had no time to pay attention to Chen Wudi's earlier battle, he could not make a detailed assessment of him. He heard Chen Wudi say, "You all will remember my name 10,000 years from now. My name is Stop being so long-winded." Ren Xiaosu angrily interrupted. "Okay." Chen Wudi turned glum. Suddenly, Ren Xiaosu heard someone shouting something. The shouting was coming from the overturned off-road vehicle. Ren Xiaosu realized the experimental that had been trying to tear through the metal body of the vehicle had disappeared. The off-road vehicle was shaking violently. It looked like the experimental had found its way inside the off-road vehicle. Save them? Or not save them? The Qing Consortium's Luolan was inside the vehicle. Currently, Ren Xiaosu was a wanted man by the Qing Consortium, and they were looking to take him dead or alive. It would already be great if Ren Xiaosu did not take this chance to make a move on Luolan, so why could he possibly want to save him? No, he could save him. However, Ren Xiaosu had to first dump the experimental he had just killed in a faraway place before rescuing Luolan. After all, the wound on the waist of the experimental was too obvious. If Luolan saw it, he might instantly match Ren Xiaosu to the person in the Jing Mountains. Since Luolan was also unaware of how many experimentals were outside the car, Ren Xiaosu would just have to tell him there were two of them, both of which had been single-handedly killed by Chen Wudi. Ren Xiaosu only rushed over after dumping the body. He saw the inside of the vehicle through the fissure. It was full of blood. A plump figure was wrestling with an experimental inside the vehicle, but he wasn't going to last much longer. The plump figure was Luolan, and the other two people in the vehicle had probably been killed by the experimental when they tried to protect Luolan. That was where the blood in the vehicle came from. At this moment, Chen Wudi rushed over and grabbed the vehicle with both hands. He let out a shout and tore the vehicle apart using the fissure. "Kill it," Ren Xiaosu ordered Chen Wudi. After Chen Wudi received the order, he grabbed his golden hooped rod and smashed it onto the experimental's head from behind. Its pale yellow blood splattered all over Luolan's face. Earlier, Ren Xiaosu noticed Luolan and the soldiers were getting along great. Moreover, he could feel their support for Luolan and Qingzhen. People that well supported must have something extraordinary about them. So Ren Xiaosu had been thinking if this life-saving favor could resolve the enmity from before. If he couldn't resolve it, it would not be too late for Ren Xiaosu to personally kill Luolan. He also thought about whether to conceal his identity by using another name, for example. But after thinking about it, Ren Xiaosu rejected the idea, because Luolan had seen Yan Liuyuan and Xiao before. "Brother, give me a hand." Luolan wiped his face and said, I can't get out of the vehicle myself. Ren Xiaosu pulled Luolan out of the vehicle. Let's leave quickly. The experimentals will break through the defensive line soon. But Luolan broke free from Ren Xiaosu and looked at Tang Zhou's group in a daze. They were about to get overwhelmed by the experimentals. Concentrated gunfire and exploding grenades sounded from time to time at the defensive line they set up. The experimentals still couldn't breach the Qing Consortium's defensive line for the time being. This battle was enough to show how outstanding the soldiers of the Qing Consortium were. Ren Xiaosu said calmly, it's hopeless for them. If you rush over there now, they would just die in vain. Luolan took a deep breath and said, I have to. Thank you for saving me, but I can't leave yet. Ren Xiaosu could tell Luolan really cared about this group of soldiers. If he didn't, his first reaction wouldn't have been to check whether his soldiers were all right after hearing the experimentals were about to breach the defensive line. This was different from Ren Xiaosu's mindset of how an organization was run. He had thought they were just a group of snobbish and cold-blooded animals. Chen Wudi turned around and looked at Ren Xiaosu. He asked, Pigsy and the others have run far away. What should we do? Let's go. Ren Xiaosu took a look at Luolan and decided to give up on him. Luolan had already run back to the troops' defensive line. There was no need to die with Luolan just because he wanted to gain passage into the stronghold. Ren Xiaosu could tell Luolan was terrified. If it were anyone else, they would be terrified as well. Now that all of the escapees had been wiped out, only a few people managed to escape successfully. This place had been reduced to ruins. But Ren Xiaosu could not understand why a fatty like Luolan could overcome his fear and run straight towards death. This wasn't about putting on an act. He would really die if he went back there. But when Ren Xiaosu and his group were about to leave, they suddenly heard the howling of wolves in the distance. This howling came at such an extraordinarily abrupt time it made Ren Xiaosu's heart sink. Was the situation about to become worse? But to his surprise, the experimentals started to stop attacking when they heard the howling of the wolves. Then they quickly retreated and left the battlefield within a minute. What was happening? Ren Xiaosu stood still as he watched the scene unfold. He wondered if it was possible that these experimentals were afraid of the wolves. Ren Xiaosu had thought things would get worse with the arrival of the wolves. However, he did not expect the wolves' presence to end up counterbalancing the experimentals and holding them in check. Ren Xiaosu did not wish to find out about what had happened between the wolves and experimentals. He only hoped to get Stronghold 109 safely. He said to Chen Wudi, Wudi, go and tell Wang Fugui and the others who is Wang Fugui. Chen Wudi was taken aback. Go and tell Pigsy and the others, to not turn back. If something happens, they should continue escaping, Ren Xiaosu corrected. It didn't seem like he could pass on the message effectively without referring to Dharma names 1. Chen Wudi went on ahead while Ren Xiaosu followed Luolan to return to the Qing Consortium's troops. Boss, why have you come back? Tang Zhou was gasping as he laid on top of a corpse. Hurry up and leave. Those things could come back soon. Luolan squatted down next to Tang Zhou. He looked around and saw that more than 90% of the soldiers who had escaped with him from the stronghold were dead. As for the remaining 5 or 6 soldiers, all of them had been seriously injured. Even though they might still be alive now, they couldn't survive long enough to get to Stronghold 109. The cruelty of the experimentals was horrifying. Squatting down next to Tang Zhou, Luolan said, do you have any words you want me to pass on? Tang Zhou smiled and said, Boss, you said you'd treat us to a good time and show us the sensual pleasures of this world when we got to Stronghold 109. We're afraid we won't make it there anymore. So, boss, please enjoy it on our behalf when the time comes. Luolan was sorrowful. I'd probably die in Stronghold 109. The two of them broke into laughter as though they had cracked some lame joke. Tang Zhou suddenly said, we don't regret it. Luolan grunted in response. let me interrupt you two for a moment. Ren Xiaosu watched the two men and could not help but stop their conversation. Actually, they won't have to die. Tang Zhou and Luolan were stunned. They simultaneously looked at Ren Xiaosu. Tang Zhou started laughing and said, "Young man, stop joking. No one can stop my bleeding." However, Ren Xiaosu ignored them and took out a vial. "I have an excellent medicine here for treating wounds. Don't worry, y'all won't die. But I won't be treating your wounds for nothing." Ren Xiaosu looked at Luolan. "In return, I want you to get us into Stronghold 109 and obtain legal resident statuses for us." But Luolan ignored the latter part of his sentence and stared at the black medicine in Ren Xiaosu's hand. This vial looked a little familiar to him. Luolan's expression gradually turned from calm to shock. "This can also treat wounds. Wait a minute, you're the magic hands that restore spring, Ren Xiaosu." "Fucking magic hands restore spring." Ren Xiaosu nearly kicked Luolan to the ground when he was reminded him about that banner. Still, Ren Xiaosu was one of the targets wanted by the Qing Consortium. Luolan could never have expected that Ren Xiaosu would appear here, and even rescue him at that. Suddenly, Luolan remembered someone had mentioned before that Ren Xiaosu was a doctor back in town. This gave him some hope. Seeing how Tang Zhou's group needed Ren Xiaosu to save them, Luolan resolutely humbled himself and tried to cotton up to Ren Xiaosu by saying, "With our relationship, I'm fine with however many people you wish to bring into the stronghold. Anything can be agreed upon as long as you save them." Ren Xiaosu was stunned. "What's our relationship?" Luolan was also left speechless by that question. He hesitated a while before saying, "A doctor-patient relationship." Ren Xiaosu speechlessly threw 3 vials of the black medicine to Luolan. "Apply these to their wounds." Luolan hesitated for a moment. "It won't have that side effect, will it?" "No, hurry up and apply the medicine on them. If the experimentals or wolves come back, no one is gonna get out of here alive." Ren Xiaosu was starting to get impatient. In reality, he decided to treat Tang Zhou and his squad mates' wounds because he wanted Luolan to owe him a favor. Even though the off-road vehicle had overturned, the transport truck was still in good condition. After he finished treating Tang Zhou's group, he could get them to drive the truck and pick up Yan Liuyuan and the others. It would be much easier for everyone this way. "Wait a minute." Ren Xiaosu suddenly thought of something. "You guys won't be arresting me after you've recovered from these injuries, right?" No. Luolan hurriedly shook his head and said, "We're actually just after Su Xianchu, but you being wanted as well was purely a coincidence." Ren Xiaosu reacted with an odd expression. "That's a good thing." He could only say in his head, "Big brother Su Xianchu, I'm sorry." Although this might inconvenience Su Xianchu a bit, what else could Ren Xiaosu do? He was forced by the circumstances. Footnotes